Yeah, and I need to make sure I say Renoir and not Renoir, because I know
Renoir.
how to pronounce it. But I just...
Renoir. Like, did you buy Renoir? Are you paying for Renoir?
Oh, Renoir, I see. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I got you. Has anyone ever purchased a Renoir license?
No way.
And welcome back to another episode of the Games Gone By podcast. It is May 10th, 2025 at the time of this recording. I'm your host, Adam, and joining me, as always, the gaming expert and enthusiast, Austin. Austin, I'm emphasizing the word expert here because I'm just so proud of you, buddy, for playing this entire game on expert.
You know, it was an uphill battle sometimes. I struggled, but we made it through. And honestly, it was a lot more satisfying than I expected.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about my feelings on game difficulty, but I think this one totally nails it for the most part. But yeah, today we're discussing Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which is the debut title from Sandfall Interactive, which was founded in 2020 in Montpellier, France. I'm going to try so hard with the accents.
Nailed it.
By a former Ubisoft developer named Guillaume Broche, who previously worked on the gameplay systems for, I believe it was the Division and Ghost Recon franchises. And then he was also, on his LinkedIn, it said he was the brand manager for Might and Magic, which I don't know what that means, because I didn't think they'd made a game in like 6 years now. But apparently
he was just sitting there managing that brand, whatever that means.
It said he did like writing on it. It's funny. The way his LinkedIn was written, it just ended in ellipses. It was like, I wrote stuff about characters, ... It's like, man, no wonder he left to form his own studio citing boredom. But it's an interesting thing because it's sort of unclear how the studio, because it's been around since 2020, and it didn't get a publisher until 2023, and people aren't sure exactly how he got the funding. But for the most part, it seems like he may have had a little bit of family money. It's not sure. It's a little bit of speculation. But also, they just kept the team size super small. Like, I think there were 3 people until 2023, right? So it was really not them expanding the team until they knew like what to do with it, right, and where they were going. But overall, like, I'm not gonna harp on all this too much with the funding because I've definitely met people who have done worse things with their parents' money. So props to him for taking advantage of the situation.
I surely don't know who you mean by that. But really, it's like you said, it's not necessarily how much you get from your family, but how you use it. Yeah. And they used it very, very successfully.
And like I said, a lot of it's speculation. I don't want to cast aspersions. I should have thrown the word like alleged in there a couple times. But the game really has an interesting history in the studio, right? There's this number that keeps getting thrown around that 30 people made this game. And I think if you went to like the Snopes fact check, it would call this mostly true. There are like 30 to 35 people that are in the core positions, but they had contracted this Korean studio of about 8 people who, as far as I can tell, did the majority of the combat animations. And that's like a pretty important part of this game. But even still, I mean, I think even if you don't nitpick on this, you're talking about maybe 50 people max, right? That were the core part of this development of this game. And it's astounding what they did with it. It feels like a game that cost way more than what it did. They said the estimate's around $40 million for this, which it made back in the first 3 days of sales. And that's not including the fat stack they got from Microsoft, right? So I think they were just very, very efficient with this. And you can tell it starts with their mission statement, which reads, "We believe the latest game-making technology now makes it possible for indie teams to deliver outstanding production value in realistic 3D graphic styles. With a focus on single-player experiences, we want to deliver incredible stories with intriguing characters in gorgeous fantasy worlds. We build the best pipelines we can to achieve this goal while keeping the creativity and agility of small teams." So from the onset, it's like they wanted to keep the team a certain size. And there's the cost part of that, but I think there's also just the creative part of that. And it worked out really well from them, from both of those avenues.
Yeah, I think they nail this mission statement with this game. I mean, for this being their debut project, they absolutely kill it. And my understanding is that like only 3 of these devs were former Ubisoft devs, and the rest are like mostly junior developers on the core team. Like haven't really done anything in the industry yet, like fresh. And they just absolutely kill it. If
you look at the website, there's actually several people whose titles are just junior dev or even intern. Like at least 4 or 5, which is a lot for a team that's so small to begin with. So yeah, a lot of really inexperienced talent that really, I think, kind of made a name for themselves here. The big stories around it were that, so the lead composer, whose name is Lorien Testar, he basically had never done a video game composition before this. Like, I'm sure he had composed music of some sort, but never for a video game and certainly never in charge of it. This man knocked it out the park. They apparently discovered him just from like SoundCloud samples he had, just like clips. So that was super impressive. And then you have Jennifer Svedberg Yin, who, this is her first video game she's worked on. She used to be, God, what was it, like a lawyer or something? Like, she was totally...
Like a private equity investor, I believe.
Okay, that's what it was.
Like, back in like 2015, she quit because she wanted like more creative avenues, and then just ended up here.
Yeah, and she said that she saw a post on Reddit in which Gilliam here was basically saying, "Hey, we just want just like people send in some samples for a project we're working on. Unfortunately, like we can't pay you, but anyone who just wants to like audition, like go for it." She thought this looked cool, so she ends up sending that in. They end up wanting to use her for a voice actress, but then somewhere along the line, she actually ends up becoming the head writer instead. And what a decision that was, because I think both the dialogue and the plot of this game have been praised endlessly. Sandfall basically did like an S-tier job of finding all of this hidden talent to work on this game.
Yeah, so much of the story around this game, I feel like, has been Sandfall, the team, and like just kind of the meta narrative going on in the real world surrounding this game. You just don't often see a game of this caliber created by such a small team. And yes, they did have all the outsourcing help, and they outsourced QA, I think, and they outsourced like marketing and whatnot. But in most cases, a game like Oblivion Remastered dropping like within a couple days before this game, just out of nowhere, would absolutely destroy any sort of hype this game would have. Like, nobody would be talking about Clair Obscur, but somehow, against all odds, it is arguably overshadowed Oblivion. Like, I feel like I see more and hear more about Clair Obscur than I do about Oblivion Remastered right now, which is just insane. And I think it's a testament to the quality of the game, the likability of the team, the story just surrounding all of this that really sets it apart and kind of puts it in this category that people were not expecting, because I certainly wasn't expecting.
Yeah, Mr. Broche has come out and said that he doesn't really think Oblivion hurt their sales, and I believe him, but it's also like by total luck. I mean, that would have been a brazen assumption by Microsoft to say, "Oh yeah, let's just drop an Oblivion Remastered right before this other game we're trying to push." That seems like a dumb move.
I think Microsoft's total, like, either incompetent or they like didn't care about Sandfall. Like, I don't know what the decision-making process was like for that, but I think it's absurd.
Yeah, it really does seem like they should have spaced it out a little longer. But it all seems to have worked out in the end, and I don't think either Bethesda or Sandfall much care about that. So if they don't, I suppose we'll also move on. But I just think that was either a huge mistake that they lucked out on, or just one of the most brazen assumptions someone could have made. But
right, they were like, we know Clair Obscur is going to be so good that we can drop Oblivion and it won't even matter. It's like, no, you didn't. Don't lie to me, Microsoft.
And maybe they did, because this damn movie, or this game, got a movie deal back in January. Like, I saw a Kotaku article from January, which is 4 months before this game came out, about already signing a movie deal. Which I think just really goes to show like how strong the premise is. And if you want to kind of explain that, what is like the main premise of this game?
From all the trailers and everything, we kind of got the feel for this, but the basic core of the game is that this world has a kind of godlike being living on an island kind of in the middle of this world, and every year she's called the Paintress, and she paints a number on this like massive monolith that kind of towers into the sky, and the number that is painted on it, everyone of that age and above, I guess, is disappeared. They just vanish, they all die, and it's counting down from 100. So like every year the number gets a little bit lower, and every year the people of the age below the number that's painted, so in this case the number that's painted on the monolith is 33, the 32-year-olds will gather up together and go on an expedition to this continent where they hope to stop the Paintress from, slowly eradicating humanity.
Yeah, and it's I guess it's worth noting that like this is both the 33rd expedition and the one of the year 33, because they didn't start with all the 99-year-olds going out. I think it starts like
Right.
a couple of decades after, right?
It's a little weird because they start with Expedition Zero, but you don't know exactly when that is. And there are journals that kind of show other expedition numbers and like other people that have gone out. So I don't know exactly how many expeditions have gone out, but it's a lot of them at this point. A lot have gone out to try and stop the Paintress, and all have failed.
Yeah, I'm actually confused now because aren't there flags that you find with numbers higher than 33? So
Yeah, there are definitely more than 33 expeditions that have gone out.
So they started from 0, but they didn't count upward. It is a little confusing.
It's a little odd. I think they start at 0 and then they go like backwards, because there are like Expedition 87, and I know like 74 is one of them, and like 60. So like I don't know exactly how they numbered the expeditions. I'm sure somebody does.
There's a little part in this game where there's just this goofy jumping puzzle, and at the end is a little creature that wants you to answer questions about this, and it literally doesn't matter what you answer. And I think that was a good move, because I was sitting there like, wait, but how many expeditions have there been? Because what year did it start? And are we counting down or up? And I just like eventually gave up. So that part's a little confusing, but the main premise I think is clear.
Yes, and it's a really strong premise, and I think you see that just in the very opening like hour of the game. I mean, dare I say, up there is one of the best video game openings I've ever seen, rivaling Last of Us or, in any of the other great video game openings, I would argue.
Yeah,
Mass Effect 2.
It might hit a little different because it's not his kid, but like I really thought it was as strong as like the Last of Us 1 opening, for sure.
The Last Effect.
Mixing my games in.
I think what's so powerful about it, right, because this game opens with you playing as the lead character, Gustav, and he is voiced by Charlie Cox, Daredevil fame. Fantastic performances, and we'll talk a lot about the writing and the dialogue and the performances in this game because they're all so spectacular. But you see this character kind of meeting up with his like ex-girlfriend, ex-lover. They've been separated for a while, and they're kind of reuniting on today, because today is the day of her gommage, which is the day that the Paintress will come out and write the new number, and everybody of that age will disappear. And she is of that age. She is 32. She is 33. Today is the day 33 will show up, right? And we kind of walk through the town, and we see all these people reacting differently and feeling differently about the end of another year of people just disappearing. And you kind of see people buying flowers, and there's like dancing, and there's like it's like a weird feeling of like celebration because we're celebrating the last year of life, while also a bit of somberness from like we're going to see all these people disappear. And it's just a really strong like tone setting scene.
And you don't necessarily know that Sophie is going to be disappearing until it happens, right? Or did I just not pick up on that?
You don't. I mean, it's heavily implied. I don't know if they don't necessarily say. Well, no, they do say on the day of her gommage. So yeah, you do know that she will disappear. I think
you definitely know something's about to go down, because it's Expedition 33 and there's a giant 34 in the background the whole introduction.
Yes,
yes. So some people are about to disappear for sure.
I guess it depends on how much. For me, I guess it depends on how much you've paid attention to like the pre-build and everything. Like I understood the premise from a lot of the trailers, so I made the assumption. But I guess they don't ever like super spell it out until she actually does disappear. And like a really sad scene where Gustav's just like, I'm here, and it's like just really, really strong acting from all the cast. But in that moment is really impactful.
Yeah, and when the gommage occurs, they kind of get a Thanos snap type thing going on where they like sort of fade away into little particles, and it just really reminded me of the the Mr. Stark, I can't feel my whatever.
Yes.
So I'm sure there's a little bit of like comparisons your mind will draw, but for the most part, it's very like it stood on its own. It felt very much in its world. I really enjoyed this opening, and it just immediately like hooks you into like, okay, I understand my character's motivations because I just saw them like suffer through this, right? So it really, I think, connects you with like Gustav and Mael and the others, and like why they want to stop this Paintress.
It really sets the tone for the immediate next scene where you're kind of gathering together for the expedition. You're talking to your other expeditioners who are all about to go out with you, and you're like kind of bonding with them. You get to talk to basically all of the people that will be in your future party. Not all of them, but you get to talk with like several of them before you even know that they're going to be with you for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And you just kind of get to set the tone and get to know everybody, which makes the immediate following scene, whenever you actually adventure out and land on the island, so much more brutal.
Yeah, so Lumiere is the name of the city that everyone that's still alive like lives in. And it's kind of on this, sort of in the middle of the ocean away from the mainland. And so they have to like sail to the rest of the continent or whatever it is. And when they arrive, it's like immediately some Normandy shit where people are just brutally getting murdered as they land. But what's crazy about, you see some weird creatures that come out, and that's more or less what you expect, some creations of the paintress. But the part that's a twist is there's an old human with gray hair who seems to just be slaughtering people on the beach. And after your expedition, which I couldn't tell if these things were 12 people or 1,200 people. It was sort of hard to figure out how big they initially are. But the vast majority of them are obliterated immediately. And your small band that kind of gets away is just completely confused about why there's an old human at all and why they are, killing people as they arrive.
Right, because no one should be alive at this point. Like, you should be well and truly anyone above the age of 33 should be dead.
Yeah.
But this guy definitely seems to be 50, 60, and he's just slaughtering your expedition in a crazy brutal scene that is just really well kind of directed. And that's so much of what this game does well, is like all of its cutscenes and all of its moment to moment like dialogue and character direction is just so good. It does feel like watching a movie at a lot of points, and the art style is gorgeous. Like it's such a great game to watch, like even when you're not playing it. We haven't talked about any gameplay whatsoever yet, and it's just constant praise because it all looks and feels so good.
It does. And I think now that we've kind of explained the premise, and that the first real big hook is now your characters are trying to find each other again because the expedition's been like scattered. But also now they're all wondering like, okay, there's even more to this than we thought, because like, who is that guy?
Right.
And the sort of way this world works is every time an expedition goes out, they usually try to send like someone back or leave some sort of note or flag or whatever that helps the previous expedition. Because there's so many themes of like, for those that came before and for those that come after, and all of this stuff where it's like you're continuing this lifelong, or this like life's long process
right.
that various people have started before you.
Right. It's like the idea, and I thought this was really cool, and it comes out in a lot of different ways throughout the game, but there is really this sense of like every expedition is supposed to build on the next, and hopefully we can get one step closer, and like maybe we won't succeed this time, but hopefully something that the last expedition did will help. And you see this throughout, like I think maybe it was Expedition 67 that was the climbing expedition, and they like set out little handholds throughout the like continent outside this island that you're at. So now there's an in-universe reason for why all these little things are here to help you climb all these mountains, because one of the last expeditions have set up all these little handholds for you. So it's like these little in-universe reasons to explain why gameplay mechanics are taking place, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and ultimately this is a game and not a movie. So why don't we hold off on some more of the story stuff till afterwards, and let's get into like why this game just feels so good to play. And there's a million ways you could start here, but it's like if I was to kind of simply describe what the game's combat feels like, it's like take a Mario RPG and just turn it up to 12. I mean, everything about it, both like the difficulty of all of the timing of the blocks and the dodge and that kind of thing, but also just the variety of like builds you can make with the character between the different skills and the weapons and whatnot. Just it ends up being something that feels challenging. It feels very satisfying when you beat those challenges, and it feels very open in what you can do with your characters. I mean, I definitely like we'll get to some more of those details later, and I have some nitpicks, but for the most part, the astounding amount of ways you can build your characters to be effective is just such a core part of what makes playing this game fun to me. Is they give you these respect tokens essentially for your skill points and your attributes, And also, let's just go ahead and say, this game has the balls to let you assign your own attribute points, which I felt like this genre has basically decided people were too stupid for 10 years ago. So I really appreciate that. You just have so much like granularity and control over how you build your characters, right?
Yeah, I think something that's so fascinating. I was actually listening to some other people talk about this game right before recording this, because that's like all I've been doing is just been consumed by people talking about Clair Obscur. And something that I kind of realized while I was listening to that is that this game feels like it has two separate like core mechanics that could stand on their own and like marries them together so perfectly. Like there's some really deep RPG systems here with like the way you can build your characters and the attributes, and this could have just been a traditional turn-based RPG and probably still have been really good. Mm-hmm. But they said, nah, that's not enough. We're going to add like these really intense parry, dodge, jump, like counter mechanics into the turn-based combat that take a lot of like patience and timing and skill to nail. To the point where like it feels similar to Sekiro or Neo or a lot of the like Souls-like games in its parry timing, and it feels so good to pull all these things off that could be a game in and of itself without all of the intense RPG mechanics that are behind it. But it marries those two things so perfectly together that it just makes a combat system that's some of the best I've seen in turn-based RPG like ever.
It really is, and the whole thing just continues to like be enhanced through the different like lumina you find, which are basically, you have so many lumina points that you can assign like these passives to, and each one's worth so many. So obviously the stronger ones cost more, but those can be freely reset in between combat all the time. So I was playing with those a lot. But essentially, like, you have your dodge and your block, or your dodge and your parry, which are your two main things. And those serve the same purpose, but the idea is that dodging is a little easier, but parrying is more rewarding. Both, like, it literally feels good, but also, if you parry an entire combo, you get a counterattack. And you get, I think every time you parry, you get an AP, or at least you can get a Lumina that does that, whereas dodging can only ever give you, like, one per turn. So there's that risk reward. Dodging is always easier, but parrying is always like more efficient, more rewarding. And a lot of the combat comes down to deciding like when is a good time to dodge versus parry. Like, is it worth the risk right now? And then also it's just, these enemies have these really long attack animations. And I eventually got to the point where I just stopped caring if I died. I still tried to do the parry and the dodge timing because I think ultimately what the game's trying to do with that is say like, hey, like, yes, you died on this first hit, but like, I'm going to keep showing you the timing every time. That way you can kind of understand how this enemy attacks, and next time you come up against this, you'll be better at it, which for me was literally like, let me restart this fight because I just died on the first turn. But it just feels so good to get the timings on these. I mean, truly some of the most satisfying turn-based combat I've ever experienced in regards to like, your party is like, one of them's dead, the other ones are at low HP, the boss still has 25% of its health, and then you just like parry its combo 3 times in a row perfectly, and you pull out like a big attack and you finish it off. And just the epic moments there feel so good. And it all is because of how tight and rewarding those two dodge and parry things feel.
100% agree. I think the parry especially feels so good to land. The sound effects that come with it, the like vibration of the controller, just like every little thing about it feels good. And it makes you want to keep parrying. Like you said, both for the damage reward that you're going to get on the counter, but also it's just like, that felt good.
Yeah.
There were so many times in this game where like I would get crushed by a combo, and we both played on Expert for a majority of the game. I know you started on Expert. Mm-hmm. I played through like half the first act on normal before realizing like, I could probably turn it up and crushing the rest of the game on Expert. Which, like, I don't do that. If you listen to this podcast, I'm a typical, like, I play on normal, and that's what I do. And I'm happy with that. I'm content with that. But this game really does make it so rewarding to get these windows down on harder difficulties. And it's just so satisfying to parry a long string. And I would jump out of my chair and be like, let's go! Like, multiple times when I would, like, parry through a 8 or 9 hit combo, and I'm like just locked in there, like, and they'll vary up the timing, so it'll be like click 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 click. It's like, oh god, But once you get it, it feels so good.
And they do such a good job building off of it because it's like as soon as you start to feel comfortable with the parry and the dodge, they throw in jump, which is just another button you have to press when a certain symbol appears during an enemy's attack. And then once you get used to that, they bring in gradient counters, which is just a different button you have to press based on these like the screen kind of turns gray for a second, so you know it's coming. And these I think are supposed to be a kind of just an easier version of parrying, but they throw it in a kind of unexpected way, so it sort of balances out. Because the window for them is kind of large, and you always get a really big damaging counterattack from it. But the way this game works is just as you go through it, it's suddenly not just, oh, this guy attacks twice and I can dodge. It becomes, this guy attacks 7 times and I have to dodge, jump, dodge, gradient counter, dodge, right? And
right.
And you really start to, I think there's just like a natural building of your skill of doing this throughout the game. They really do a great job incrementing this slowly, introducing these new mechanics slowly, and having it to where the enemy's attacks get progressively more brutal. So you're not just feel like you're immediately dropped in a deep end to where if I don't parry this 5 times, I'm dead. It really starts you off slow and builds you. And I think that's part of why Expert worked so well for both of us here, is that the game was sufficiently brutal at the right times. It had built you up to that brutality. It was like, hey, you've gone through this entire dungeon, you figured out these timings. Now here's a boss that's going to kick your ass until you really prove that you figured out these timings. And it's just so good, man. The gameplay was just, it never got old. It never did.
Yeah, and part of that I think is the fact that this game is not that long, right? Like you hear JRPG or JRPG inspired. Technically, it's a French RPG, but you hear like JRPG inspired, and you go like, oh man, this is going to be like 80 hours, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life on this game. And it really comes in right around 35 to 40 hours, even doing like a fair amount of extra. And so it never like overstays its welcome. The combat stays fresh all throughout because, like you said, it builds incrementally at a really good pace. And as soon as you think like, oh man, there were like probably 4 or 5 times in this game where I was like, I'm never going to beat this. I'm going to have to go back down to normal. Like, I'm so screwed. Like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And then like three tries later, I'm like crushing it and I'm like popping off like, let's go. Like it's so rewarding because it does really help you like learn. It's just like you keep trying it and you keep getting better at it. And it's something that I've tried like every Dark Souls game and every Souls game on the planet, I feel like. And I've never gotten that feeling from those games. And I don't know what is different here. Maybe it's just the pacing of like learning the counters and the combos and everything. It feels like better paced, but I never got that experience with those Souls games. I always just felt like disheartened and dejected and like I was never going to finish this, and it just made me want to quit. But in this game, when I got those moments when I felt that way, I was like, no, I can do this. I see the finish line. Like every fight, I'm getting the boss a little bit lower health. I can see the goal, and I know I can get there if I can just parry this one more time, and then I would do it, and it would just feel so good. Like
I think what makes it more accessible than like a Souls game is that like the punishment in the moment is obviously like brutal for missing because you can take a lot of damage and your character will die, but ultimately like the penalty for failing an encounter is that you get to load right before it instead of losing your souls and fighting your way back. And because of that, and also like your party members that are dead, if someone lives, will revive with 1 HP after that encounter. And you get these consumables that restore at little camp, or at the flags, which are basically like the little campfires in Dark Souls, right? And so you're really encouraged to use them often to heal your party outside of combat. There's 3 different types you can use in combat, but it kind of does this great job cutting back on your traditional like slew of JRPG consumables that you, despite having thousands of, never want to use because you think you'll need them later.
Right, because you never know when. You might need all of them in the final fight.
So that whole part works great, and it just feeds into, like, I think you're so much more willing to try to parry. Like, when I played Dark Souls games, I was always dodging, because I was like, I know I'm not going to get the parry, and I'm going to die, and I'm going to lose 20,000 souls, and I have to walk all the way back here. But in this, it was like, dude, I'm going to try to parry this, because I've been doing well with the dodging, and what's the worst that can happen? I have to start the fight over? That's fine. So I just think it sets it up to where it's like, it's still a difficult, rewarding thing, but the punishment for failure isn't so discouraging.
I think that's a really good point, because I think I even said somewhere in my notes, like, it feels like this isn't a long haul game like a JRPG where you're like trying to figure out resource management and like keep your party healed up between long stretches of battle because you only have like 3 tints and you can't heal up. It's like this game really is each individual battle is your challenge, because more likely than not you will have a way to heal up all the way before the next battle. And there was rarely a time when I went into a battle without full HP unless I wanted to. Like, you could always go in fully healed, fully ready for the next battle. So it really becomes each battle is a test of your skill, not the next, 45 minutes of the dungeon is a test of your skill. It's like each battle is that skill test.
And you can really be like as aggressive and dangerous as you want with it, because something that I love to do. So there's a couple different characters that have abilities that do more damage the less health you have. So I noticed like, okay, when he dies and then I win the battle anyway, he comes back with 1 HP, and then we start the next battle with him at 1 HP, and these abilities are now doing so much damage because he has 1 HP. And since you can dodge and parry, it's not as like unviable as a lot of RPGs would be to walk around with 1 HP, right? So I would do whole dungeons with Gustav at 1 health, or Verso really, because he had that Berserker thing that did more damage with no health. And it's like, obviously when I got to a boss, I'm going to heal first. But all these trash mobs, I was like, bring it, dude. Every 3-man fight became a 2-man fight because I'm just going to wipe out one of you.
Right. And I think that's what's so interesting about this game is just the number of ways that you can approach combat. Mm-hmm. Like, the builds that you can make are so elaborate and are so varied. Like we took entirely different approaches throughout most of this game.
I don't think I cast a heal spell until like 3 hours left in Act 2. Yeah.
Right. Meanwhile, like at the end of Act 1, Lune just become like healer extraordinaire.
Yeah, I just love how you could do like maximum healing or no healing, and both would work if you did them right.
Yeah, and I think another strong point of this game is that each character has a very unique skill set and a very unique way to play. Mm-hmm. And this is not like a one-size-fits-all. This is not like a metaphor, which that has its place as well. But like in metaphor, which we talked about last year, right? Anybody could be anything. You can set everybody, it's very job system based, and you can set anybody to be anything. And this game doesn't really work that way because everybody has their specific skill set and a very unique mechanic that follows them. Like Lune has her stains where, when she casts a spell, she generates a little magic pip, that's called a stain. And that can power up other spells or have different effects on other spells. So you're kind of building off of your last spells to get, the ultimate spell or whatever. Or like, Gustav can like charge up his mechanical arm that he has to unleash this like crazy powerful punch that will do like so much crazy damage on overcharge. And each character
completely forgot about Gustav's specials, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, understandable, but each character has their own like little unique thing that sets them apart from everybody else. That makes it fun and engaging to play with every character. Like, I wanted to keep certain characters leveled up, even if they weren't my main party member, even if they weren't somebody that I was always running with. I still wanted to keep them leveled up because they had fun and interesting mechanics behind them.
Yeah, and it manages to do that without feeling like something like in Final Fantasy IX where everyone is really, really locked into rigid roles, because you still have, like the way this game works is your weapons are kind of like Dark Souls where there's a couple different attributes associated with your weapon that's going to power it up. So if you want to build a character to have a lot of defense and vitality, you can find a weapon that gets stronger with your defense and vitality. If you want to build it with agility and crit, you can find a weapon that gets stronger with your agility and crit. So they really give you that flexibility. But then, like you said, the mechanics of each character are really unique, right? Like Male does all her little stance dancing. She has stances that do, like different skills will do more damage based on what stance she's in. And the stances have passives already. Like it's defensive stance, you take less damage. It's offensive stance, you do more damage. But you weave those together for the optimal combinations. Lune has these things called stains. They're basically little elemental energy pips. So anytime you cast a spell, you generate a pip of energy, which you can then use to like power up other spells. CL has some sort of like deck of cards where she puts like these marks of fate on someone and then she can consume them. And she goes into this, it's like if she uses dark spells, she gets powerful in this way. Light spells, she gets powerful in this way. Then they combine to become Twilight. Like there's just so much depth to the individual character mechanics while still between the weapon passives and the Picto and Lumina allowing you to more or less build them however you want to. And that it's an insane amount of flexibility while still keeping the individual character identity. I mean, possibly better than any game I've played before of this type.
Yeah, like the closest thing I can compare it to is, you know, we praised Remake and Rebirth, the Final Fantasy VII remakes, endlessly for their like customization and kind of the materia and the way you can kind of shape everybody and each character playing the same or playing differently. I feel like this game does that just as well, if not even, like you said, arguably better. Like every character plays differently. They all have their own unique purposes. And you can still build and customize around them in a really strong way. And I think, you know, there's so many, all the different weapons all have different, like, passive effects as well. So you could be building out a weapon that's like, okay, this is good with my agility and vitality. But then it's like, but I really love the passives on this one. So then you can respec your attributes to make it match the weapon that you have.
Yeah.
And the game definitely wants you to, right? Because it doesn't give you unlimited respec. But there was never a time, at least I felt, that I didn't have enough points to respec if I needed to. And I know I don't respec as much as you do. Or as, you know, maybe even as much as some other people do. But it does feel like the game kind of wants you to build for like a universality. It wants you to like, it doesn't want you to build for each individual fight. You know, it's like, we want you to be well-rounded and can take care of, you know, anything that comes your way. But if you're really stuck and you want to rebuild to kind of match this next fight, you can do that. And it gives you the ability to do that. And a lot of the times it will be like, this weapon has a better passive that will work for here, but I really need to respec my attributes because they're not matching right. Let's do that. Or, you know, I need to reset my Pictos or my Lumina. Like, my Pictos are giving me plus, you know, 1,000 HP, but I really need more defense here because the HP isn't mattering because I'm, you know, whatever, right? And you can go in and kind of respec all those things in between fights. And it just feels so good to build out these characters. I did so much more of it in this game than I typically do, and it always felt good and fun and fresh, and I was like excited to get into the menus and like kind of play around with stuff.
Yeah, and the Pictos are really cool because it's essentially like each character gets to equip these 3 little tokens called Pictos, and you get them from anything from like finishing main story quests to finding them on the off-beaten paths of like just exploring the world or buying them in shops. And they all do 2 things. They have a set of stats that they give you, right? So it might give you health and defense or health and crit or whatever. And then there's a passive. And the passives can be crazy on some of these, right? Some are like fairly straightforward. It's like, oh, you get an extra AP when you dodge once per turn. Cool. Other ones are like, you know, glass cannon. You deal 50% more damage, but you take 50% more health. There's another one that's like, every time you parry, you gain health. There's another one that's every attack either is going to do twice as much damage or half damage. And it gets crazier and crazier by the end. And the cool part is when you win 4 battles with one of these equipped, it then becomes a Lumina, and you can always equip that passive effect regardless of whether you have the Picto equipped or not. Which at first, at the beginning of this game, I was completely ignoring the stat bonuses on the Pictos because I just cared about the passives. And then midway through the game, it almost became the opposite where I was only concerned about the stats. And then toward the end, you realize that actually there's like a really delicate balance of giving people good passives through the Pictos so that you don't have to waste Lumina points on equipping those through Lumina. And also the stats toward the end are just insane. Like I remember at one point, one of my characters only had like 1,200 health toward, you know, the end of Act 2. And then I equipped him with some Lumina and now he's got 5,000. And I was like, oh, like I should pay attention to the vitality numbers on this, right?
Yeah, there are a limited number of Lumina points. So like you can't put all the best abilities on Lumina, like
right.
we kind of talked about. Like you have to make sure you're paying attention to the passives on the Pictos. But by the end game, some of these bonuses on health, you can get like 3,000 health from a Picto, and you're like, okay, like I don't care what the passive is, I need that health buff. Yeah. Like, and this isn't really a spoiler, I guess, but there is a moment in the last act where if you go to the right island and talk to the right person, if you've helped all the, like, throughout the game, there's these little, like, Nevrons, which are the enemies, but they're Nevrons that don't attack you. They, like, want something from you. Mm-hmm. Like, in the very beginning, you bring one, like, a flame to help light their lantern.
Yeah, and he gives you, like, an extra health potion that you use in battle. Like, your stock goes up.
Right. Well, at the end of the game, and in the third act, if you've helped everybody, if you've helped all these Nevrons and didn't kill any of them, there is a guy that will give you like 100 Lumina points. Like he'll just drop 100. Yeah, he'll like drop 100 color of Lumina on you, and it's like, okay. So then, as soon as I got that, I was like, all right. So then you jump into the characters and you start assigning points to everybody, and you give like everybody like a blanket 20 to start or whatever, a blanket 10. You're like, okay, who needs more? How do I need to build people? So it's like the game starts to give you options towards the end game to really beef up these characters, because some of the in-game content in this game is absolutely brutal.
And here I thought I was being slick by helping all of these guys and then immediately killing them afterwards for the experience.
Nope. That guy will not give you that 100 Lumina now. At least I don't think he does. But yeah, like so much here to build around your character, so much customization that even I, somebody who doesn't normally like customize like that to that extent, I was like knee deep in it, and I was like super excited to rebuild all my characters and kind of figure out the best combinations to bring into a fight.
So this is where my first major complaint with the game systems comes in, which is so the respec tokens they give you for the skills and the attribute points, I thought those were plentiful. Like you get enough through just playing the game. You can also buy some in shops. That was fine. But you can't refund the resources used to upgrade weapons. And initially, this is not a huge problem because I feel like you get a pretty decent amount. But toward the end, it's obvious that like unless you're grinding all of that Act 3 stuff, you're going to get 2 weapons to level 20, maybe. And I don't mean per character. I mean 2 weapons. And and so you really can't experiment. And every weapon has a passive at level 20 that's sort of like its ultimate passive, right? And there were so many I was looking at the end of the game where I was like, oh my God, I want to play with that so bad, but I literally can't. I literally have no way to get that weapon to level 20. And I really wish you had just been able to use a token to like respect, even if it was only one character at a time, right? Let me get all of the resources back that I used in Lune's weapons or something similar. Because I just wanted to play with different ones. And it's like, okay, it's cool that I can respec my attribute points, but I don't need to because they're always assigned in a way that lends toward the 2 weapons that I can use toward the end of the game, right? So I just really felt, right. I personally would have liked a lot more if I could get those back, because I wanted to play with some of the weapon passives, because those can change your build so much. I mean, there's this one for Verso where he can attack twice with a regular attack, and then it's like the second level of that is that it gives you, what is it, an extra AP or something? And it just seemed so cool. Yeah. And I was like, all right, but like it's level 15, and it's lowering my damage. I don't get the bonus passive. Yeah. I just can't do anything about it. And that was frustrating to me. It's kind of a small complaint in the overall context, because there's still, between the 2 weapons I did level up, there was like enough to play around with. But toward the end, that's like all I wanted to do was just play with some of these other weapons that are essentially just dead weight. And oh my God, there's so many.
There are a lot of them.
There's like 18 for Verso, and they all have stupid ass names that don't mean anything. Like, I'm sure they do in like fake French, but not to your average person.
Yeah. And there's definitely a moment towards the end of the game where it's like, I don't care about like 80% of these weapons. I'm really only looking at like these 3.
Why do the weapons without passives exist? Like, why are they in there? I don't understand.
Yeah, because most of the time too, like in the early game, some of those non-passive weapons can be a lot stronger. But, like, by midway through Act 2, like, that's never a problem anymore. Because you have weapons that have passives and are also stronger. And it's like, well, I don't need this. And you can't, like, sell it or anything. There's no way to do anything with the weapons that are, you know... Maybe those are for, like, you know, fake challenge, right? Where it's like you want to do your own challenge, so you're just gonna like put a weapon with no passive to hate yourself.
Solo starting weapon, no Lumina challenge. I'm sure someone's doing it
right. Exactly. Somebody's doing that, and they're just doing like a no hit run through the entire game, so that they can win with that. Yeah, Somebody's already beaten this game with a Guitar Hero controller. You know, it's fine.
And I also like, and maybe it's just the power gamer in me, but I wanted a little more transparency on where some of the values were coming from. Because I remember at one point, like I was looking at some weapons for someone, and there were two different weapons that were the same level. They were like level 12, and they had the exact same set of stats on them. It was like agility and luck, and yet they didn't do the same amount of damage. They didn't have the same power attached to it. And I was just like, okay, what is this number? Where is it coming from? Ultimately, it's not that big a deal because you know bigger numbers better. So I just went with the one with the bigger number. Right. But
very true.
But because of the passives, I was just kind of interested in the weaker one. But I was like, am I just gimping myself? So there's there's an argument for some of that not being transparent. You don't want to overload the player. You want some mystery. Like I get it, but this is just these things in games that kind of annoy me sometimes because there's aspects of the system that make it seem like they want to give you total control of how you do things, but then they also just hide shit from you at random. So, but like overall, I just want to be clear. I loved this game and I loved building the characters.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of a big complaint, but it didn't really have a big impact, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think as someone who is kind of deep in the Act 3 in-game grind, like we both completed this game for full transparency. We completed the story. I have kind of gone back into the Act 3 like deep in-game grind with a lot of the super bosses and like a lot of the additional content, and you do get a lot more of these weapon upgrades, like especially if you do like the endless tower at the end of the game. Every fight, I think every single fight that you clear there gives you both a level 19 weapon upgrade and the level like 32 weapon upgrade or whatever.
Okay,
so like you are getting a fair number of these in the Act 3 stuff. So as you're building to like fight those super bosses, I do think you get more of that resource. It's just you have to go and do that stuff, which is, you know, maybe not everybody's cup of tea or not, you know, where you want to spend all your time grinding out these like super hard, challenging fights.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about some of that Act 3 stuff when we get back to the story. But for now, I want to talk about two aspects of this game that have really, I think, elevated it above where it could be. And for me, that is the dialogue and voice performances, like the character conversations and how well written and performed they are, and the music, both of which are just out of this world.
Absurd. I mean, just so impressive. This cast is phenomenal to me.
It really is. And I remember, like, right when I started the game, I'm talking to you in Discord, and I was like, this might be the most drawn in to an individual character's performance that I've ever been this early in a game. And it was Gustav. Like, before you fight your first enemy, I was already like, dude, Gustav's awesome. Like, he sounds like a real person. It sounds like there's emotion in his voice. The dialogue seems like fluid and kind of, casual is the right word, but like, it just feels like something someone might actually say. And it feels like it's said in a way someone might actually say it. And it's actually astonishing. I was playing Assassin's Creed Shadows before this, right? Like, I don't want to like rag on that game. I enjoyed it when I played it, but the conversations in that game, and I don't know if it's because everyone has to sound like someone whose English is their second language in that game, but like, it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like two people having a conversation that they give a shit about at all. It's awkward. It's stilted. The characters, like, voices don't really have emotion so much as they just crack sometimes. Like, I really was very unimpressed by the voice acting in that game. And then coming from that into this, like I said, dude, it's Last of Us quality. It's Uncharted. It's the Naughty Dog cinematic conversation without being a Naughty Dog game. And I just don't know where else that exists, frankly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, there was just this immediate appeal to these characters, and I think one of the things that we kind of talk about when we're talking about video game voice acting is the ability for characters to talk over each other. Like, that just doesn't happen very often in video games.
Well, BioWare's system literally couldn't do it until Mass Effect 3. So,
which is just insane to think about. And right, I mean, we've come a long way in the last 12 years, to be fair, 13 years of game development since Mass Effect 3 came out. But there's several moments in this game where, like, a character will be talking and another one will just like scream over them to shut them down, because it's like, I don't agree with what right the fuck the mission line is so good. It's so raw and real, where Gustav's just like, no, fuck the mission, like, I'm going to save my L, like, I'm going do the thing that I want to do, and I'm going to, you know, have my agency because I don't care about the mission. And then Lune responds immediately after that with like an equally compelling, like, no, like, I hear what you're saying, but I take all that pain and fear, and I forget the exact line, but like she's like, and I continue. And there's just like this sense of passion in it that all these characters deliver their lines so well, and the writing is so strong, and it really is like immediately gripping throughout the entire game. And there's so many like side conversations and just completely optional stuff that you can do that is all written with the same care and love and performed with the same care and love that the main dialogue is.
You can set up camp and talk to your party members, and it reminds me a lot of like talking to them on the Normandy, in Mass Effect. And while there's not like as many lines of dialogue, it's not as many options, there's not quite as much like backstory. What is there is so good, and I think it is the most fun I've had talking to like my quote unquote companions on the spaceship since Mass Effect. I mean, it's just great.
100%. It also has like a relationship leveling system kind of akin to Persona, where like you level up your relationship and you can get certain little bonuses at certain levels. Like you'll unlock at the max level, you'll unlock a new gradient attack, or like halfway through you'll unlock a new gradient attack, which is like a powerful attack that you build up throughout a fight. There's like a little bar that'll build up, and then you can use it as kind of like a supplement to your turn. It won't take up a whole turn. And as you're having these relationship like conversations, you can level those up. But that like doesn't even matter, because the actual conversation is the thing that I'm wanting to hear.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, yes, talk to me. I want to know more about you, because I know that this piece of dialogue and this performance will be so enticing whenever you're doing it.
And one of the coolest touches with the relationship system is, like warning, major spoilers for Act 1.
Yes, oh my god, the biggest of spoilers.
So Gustav is your main character through Act 1, and at the end of Act 1, he meets his demise, and you get a new character named Versa who kind of replaces him in your party, and it is only then that the relationship system starts. And I think that's a really cool touch, because it was Sandfall recognizing that having it from the start would feel really just like Persona has it, so we need to as well. Because these characters already know each other. Like, it doesn't make any sense that they would have to build their relationship up. And it is the perfect blend of narrative and gameplay for it to come in only after Verso joins the party, which is the character no one else knows. And you actually feel, along with Verso, that you are getting to learn these people that you've only known for a short while, right? You're building these relationships in the same way Verso is. And I felt like it was a brilliant touch. Like a simple thing, but it's so effective.
For sure. And I think all of these stories that you're kind of having with these people lead to really, really strong conclusions. Like all of the final conversations feel like you've really gone on a journey with these characters. Like, having CL's backstory kind of pronounced throughout the game and learning about her tragic past and the things that she's gone through, it feels rewarding when you get to the end there and kind of have this bonding moment with her. And it's like, yeah, I feel like you're my friend now. Like I feel like we've been through this journey together, and I've learned all about you, and like we've made this deeper connection. And it's like that for every character. And some of them actually end in like a gameplay quest in Act 3 that is a pretty fun side quest. And one of the few examples of like actual side missions in the game. There's not a ton of like side missions in the traditional sense, but these that kind of end the relationship quest do feel like well thought out missions that are fun, and they're pretty short, but like they're a rewarding mission experience.
And I just think the way that they reveal some of these characters' backstory, like the pacing of it's done really well. There's these two big enemies you have to fight called the Axons, and they're basically guarding the Paintress's lair. So you have to take them out before you can get to the Paintress's, or to the Paintress's lair. And there's one of these Axons does some weird thing where they like hypnotize you and make you hallucinate like lost loved ones. And that's really where you see, for the first time, like CL's mentioned her dead husband, but her husband is holding a baby in this image.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit. Like she lost a kid too somehow. And she had never mentioned this. So of course Verso is like, next time you have a conversation in camp, he's like, hey, so about that. And
right.
And it's just such a great way that they kind of give it to you piecemeal, but it never feels like some like bullshit mystery box they're holding on to just because. I mean, it really feels like it just wasn't relevant. Like, why would she bring it up? Okay, well now she has to. And it's these great moments like that. Another thing the game does well is You're an attractive dude in a party of like 3 attractive women. And while there are like a couple of scenes that imply that they might like hook up off screen, it's not really, I wouldn't call it a romance option. And the game really stops itself from being this ridiculous, like, I'm a guy with an anime harem thing. Like, it never leans into that. It has so much respect for the women in this party. And they're just great characters, right? They all have their own motivations and their own family and their own people they're in love with. And all of the like mild bits of sexual tension are very much framed as just, it's because we're all about to die and we're lonely. And it's, it happens.
Right. There's a really great scene when you get to the end of Lune's relationship, like arc, her tree, and at this point, from probably here on out, we're just going to be saying spoilers. I think,
from here on out, yes.
Right, we're just gonna stop beating around the bush. After we spoiled Gustav's death, I think we're spoiler clear at this point.
Yeah, possibly the second biggest spoiler, maybe. So
yeah, I mean, there's some big twists in this game for sure, but that's probably the biggest. But there's this great moment at the end of Lune's relationship story where her parents die. Like, we know that her parents are dead. They were on a previous expedition. And kind of as you're learning about Lune, you learn that her parents kind of raised her to be a lab assistant, and just like their sole focus was mission. Like, we have to stop the Paintress. That's all you're good for, Lune, is helping us stop the Paintress. And she struggles with this throughout the game. And at the end, you can actually go and find her parents' journal and like find the end of the expedition. Well, I guess it's not her parents' journal, but it's like you find her expedition's journal. And throughout this whole game, I guess I should emphasize that you find journals from past expeditions, and they kind of give backstory about what happened on previous expeditions, and you can read them, and they give like some additional lore context, and they're all voice-overed, and it's a cool feature to help kind of build out the world. But you can see Lune's her parents' expedition journal, and even in the expedition journal, her parents are like, Lune will finish the mission. And she really has this moment of like, that's all I am. And Verso kind of says like, you have to be your own person, and like the voices that you hear in your head aren't your parents' voices, that they're your own voices. Like, you have to do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And then the next time you talk to her, she's like writing a song and playing guitar, and like this really nice bonding moment with Verso that you can then take into like a romantic sense kind of. But it was a really powerful scene for me of like Lune kind of becoming more than what her parents had wanted her to be. And all of these stories end in such satisfying ways to me.
They do. I'm reminded of like, is it in Mass Effect 1, Garrus is always talking about like that Dr. Hart, and then you eventually get to go find the ship where he was, and you get to like go hunt him down because he's someone that basically like betrayed Garrus or something. And I remember that feeling like so satisfying. This is like that times 10. Every single one of these stories.
Yeah.
They don't drop plot threads. They don't bring up random characters out of nowhere. They all really organically build up to satisfying conclusions. And most of them being what you kind of already know, because like no one's coming back to life, or, so you think. We'll get to that later. But in the moment you're like, CL's like ex-husband and baby, they're gone. And Luna's parents are gone. And so, there's going to be some sort of closure. And it just all works so well. I mean, I can't speak enough, like highly enough, of both the writing, like the individual dialogue writing, the overall plot and storytelling, and the performances. They're just almost flawless, and they all work together so well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, right, a little early for Game Awards talk, but
this will be on Game of the Year list, undoubtedly.
Oh, for sure. It will almost definitely be mine. Yeah. I have a hard time believing anything will overcome it throughout the rest of this year. I keep looking at the games that are coming out this year, and I'm like, that won't do it. That won't do it. But if Charlie Cox, who plays Gustav, Jennifer English, who plays Mael, Ben Starr, who plays Verso, or Andy Serkis, who plays kind of your main evil old antagonist Renoir, if none of those are like nominated for Performance of the Year, Game Awards is dead to me. Like, it's just instantly dead to me. Like,
so who's doing Verso again?
Ben Starr.
Okay. Personally, I think that's who I would nominate of all of these. Not that you could go wrong with any of them, but to me that was like, he had the most lines of those, I guess, and delivered them
Yeah.
just amazingly.
I would agree. I think Ben Starr absolutely kills it, and it's so funny coming off of. I know you weren't the biggest fan of Ben Starr when he played Clive in Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, I thought he was like,
I think you liked Clive, but like wasn't anything to write home about. And here you are saying like, let's nominate this man. Like, and it just goes to show like part of it is writing, right? Part of it is the lines that he is given and the direction that he is given, but. There's a scene at the end that I know we'll talk about where he just absolutely crushes it. And it's just, the performances in this game from everybody are incredible. The writing is so top notch. And a lot of times it's really funny. Like, we haven't talked about Monoko at all. Or Monoko. But oh my god, he's hilarious.
So there's this group, there's just like race of beings in here called the Gestrals. And they're hard to describe. They're like humanoid shaped, but like furry, but not that kind of furry. And
whoa, and they're kind of like wooden almost, and they look like they're made out of wood.
Yeah, they almost look like kind of witch doctory at times. It's a strange combination of influences.
Really cool character design though.
Yeah,
like because they're all very different too, but like you can all tell that they're Gestrals. Like
and you get one called Monoko, who's someone that Verso has known for a long time, because Verso is someone who is from like this. He's been around a long time. He has the gray hair too.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly how all this works through most of the game, but you do know that there's something different about him. And he has lived much longer than 33 years.
Yeah, so Verso, like, he's been around for a while and knows Monoko. And when you meet Monoko, there's one of the funniest scenes I think I've seen in a game in a long time. And I keep going back to it because Monoko's just hilarious. He's, like, very sarcastic, very, like... You meet him and you're like, hey, Monoko, want to come on this adventure with me? Like, we're going to Old Lumiere. And immediately he's like, okay, bye. And, like, turns around and walks away. And then you're like, Verso's like, yeah, there will be a lot of fighting, though. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Count me in. Like, and it's so expertly delivered and it's so funny. And he just has all these, like, really, like, snide kind of, like, you know, it's hard to even describe, but like a lot of the minute-to-minute writing is really funny too.
It reminded me a lot of the original Star Wars trilogy in that the funny moments come directly out of the characters' interactions with each other and their conversations with each other. And it's not like random slapstick nonsense or like out of universe or off-topic jokes. It's all funny because it is like truly the characters like coming to life and bumping into each other, and that's where the humor comes. That's what it is in this game too, right? It's the conversations in camp, the conversations in cutscenes, the conversations with the Gestrals in their town. All of it's coming through those character interactions, and it just feels so organic. And like, no, it feels forced, even when it's not like necessarily super funny. It doesn't feel tacky or like lame, you know?
Yeah, and right, like mileage may vary for the humor. Like I really liked Esquier. I thought Esquier was really funny and like just really charming and like. He's like, oh, mon ami, and it's just like, Esquier, like, you're my best friend. Like, we love you, Esquier. And just he's like, you want a hug? And it's like, yes, I do, Esquier. I do want a hug.
He's definitely a little bit of the like Jar Jar Binks of this game, but
I think he's handled much better than the Jar Jar Binks of the world.
Sure. I don't want to. I gotta give him some credit.
Do not do that to Esquier. How dare you?
Because it's weird because he's like this big, like fat looking being, and he's like you find out very early that after you meet him that apparently he's like the most powerful thing in the whole world, but he doesn't like to fight, so he doesn't. Which like later on, that's a little less stupid once you get some of the twists. But I spent most of Act 1 thinking like, there's a psychopath that doesn't care that hundreds of people like get Thanos snapped every year. This guy sucks. I hate him.
Nah, I love Esquier. At one point, you find out that he's literally just like hoarding like bottles of like really fancy wine in his body. And he's just like starts like spewing wine out of his body. And it's like, what is Esquier? Like, what even is this character?
But yeah, so the characters are great, and I think we've talked about most of them. We'll talk about them more when we get to some of the plot reveals. But before we get back into the story, I do want to talk about the music and the art, because both of them are just fantastic. You know, the art style. So Clair Obscur like roughly translates into light dark. I don't think it's like a proper French phrase, but that's more or less what it's getting at. And so there's a lot of contrast between light and dark in this game, and not in a very like tropey good versus evil thing. But it certainly comes across in the art style. There's a lot of great work done with shadows in this game. There's certain cutscenes inside of buildings where if you squint a little bit, it looks like Game of Thrones. It looks like a movie. It's just the lighting is amazing and the character models are so well done. And I feel like they really put their effort into like the efficient parts of this, right? We were talking about this before the episode. I was noticing in Old Lumiere, there's a bunch of just like signs and lampposts that you can kind of clip right through. And in some games, people might be like, oh, wow, like why doesn't the sign like move when I bump into it? But these guys were like, who cares about that? Like, does the sign and lamppost look cool? Okay, great. We're done here. Let's put our energy back where it matters. And I think the art style just looks so damn cool. My only complaint would be there's some areas where it kind of like, it makes it a little hard to navigate because I think it's kind of, sometimes it feels visually muddy. And this game doesn't have a ton of like built-in navigation systems, but you'll get used to it pretty quick. I think after 10 hours in the game, that was like no longer a problem for me at all. And I just really enjoyed the environments. The character models are fantastic. I mean, there's truly no part of the art that I thought was subpar. One
of the things that I think is so great about the art in particular is that like each area feels unique. Like there's not a lot of times when I felt like I was going through and rehashing old areas or looking at kind of old designs. Like it all felt new and fresh and constantly engaging and interesting every time I went to a new spot.
Oh, actually, I have a question. There's like these random blue stone pillars throughout the game. Can you eventually break those somehow?
The like weird little like they almost look like trees kind of with like the blue lines through them.
Yeah, they're like twisted.
Yeah. It's one of the Lost Gesture rewards. I think if you find 4 of them, you can then break them for like additional items and stuff.
Oh my god, I never once went back to talk to the Gesture guy in camp. Not a single time.
If you find 4 of them, I think he lets you break them.
Oh, damn, I found like 5 or 6, but I just figured you only got something at the end, so I just like gave up and didn't even bother to talk to him.
No, go back and talk to him, then you can break them if you ever go back to this game. But a lot of the art design reminded me kind of Final Fantasy X, and this game has a lot of Final Fantasy X inspiration. Mm-hmm. But one of the things about it was that like the areas are kind of linear paths, they're condensed, there's not a lot of like open roaming exploration to do, but every area feels unique and different and like you're going on a journey to another part of this world. And I felt that a lot in Final Fantasy X, and I felt it a lot again here, where it's like, it doesn't matter so much that the game is kind of shuffling you down like linear corridors, because every spot is new and interesting, and like you just want to see this part of the world. And even if you can't walk all over an open space, it still feels like you're exploring a new area.
And I think it works well because there's still like just enough side paths with a little currency or a Picto or a mime fight here and there. And because the game doesn't really have like a quest marker interface that comes up over you or like a beacon of light that guides you toward it, the linearity of the level design just helps you be able to navigate it without needing all of that. And so I think all that works pretty well. I mean, I still really appreciated when I'd go off the beaten path and found like some extra lumina or some chroma or some new Pictos or a baguette outfit after a mine fight, right?
And you always do. There's like there's no side path, I think, in the entire game that leads to nothing. Like never once did I go down a side path and end up with nothing to kind of be rewarded with. There's always at least like a cool fight or a new weapon or a new Picto or something at the end of every off-beaten path, right? So it never feels like you're searching it for no reason.
It was very rare I ever felt like I didn't know where to go inside of a level. Sometimes it was like, which area on the overworld map am I supposed to be going to? But once you were in it, like I felt it was very navigable for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people I feel like complain about, oh, there's no mini map, and I'm like, it just never once was a problem for me. Like,
yeah, there was maybe twice I was like, I could use that right now, but for the most part, it didn't seem to be like an obstacle to navigating.
Right, and I think, some people would complain about there not being like a side quest journal. I can maybe agree with that. I would maybe have liked to have like a journal to remind me of some of the things that I did, but it was never like a huge problem.
Because there's not that many.
Yeah, exactly, and most of them are pretty straightforward. It's like, go here, do this.
And in the companion quest at the end, they literally just put a second quest marker on your map.
Yeah.
So you can find it. Like
Right. We still didn't talk about the music, though, in depth, because it is the coolest thing ever of all time.
It is. It kind of... You remember we were talking about Doom, which I guess... Did that air yet at the time of this? Maybe not. It's like airing today. But the music in that game, it's like dynamic with the combat, and it adds so much to it, and it's such like a core part of the game's identity. I think the same would be said for this game. You were telling me that there's some sort of system involved where like it remixes a bunch of tunes together based on like how well you're performing in combat and which area you're in. And there's a lot of, there's the core Clair Obscur song that gets so many different versions of it sprinkled throughout the game. Like it reminds me of the, in Final Fantasy VII, there's like the Chocobo song and then they remix it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Like it's something similar. And, it's so well done. And it's all like beautifully done orchestral pieces for the most part. There's like some sick electric guitar toward the end. It's really good. I mean, it's just great. I don't know how else to say it.
There's some cool like jazz tunes in there, like when you fight Minoko. There's like this like when I first got into the fight with Minoko and heard the weird like wop 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 thing that started going on, I was like, oh, let's go! Like I am ready for whatever this is.
He has a fun like theme song.
Yeah, there's so many like different types of sounds and different types of things that they do with the music that just sounds like so cool and so unique, and it all kind of comes under the same like big orchestral umbrella, but there's like a bunch of vocal tracks with like French and like a made up like French adjacent language that is like created specifically for the soundtrack, I think. But it all just sounds so cool when a vocal track comes in because it gives it this grandioseness where it's like you just get pumped up. Like all the boss themes in this game are so cool. Like every time I fought a boss, I'm like, "Yep, let's go. I'm ready." Like,
and the boss fights in this game are so good. And the music is a large part of it.
Some of the best boss fights in any game.
Yeah, and something that I kind of wanted to mention earlier is that the way the parrying and the dodge windows work is, I swear, it's not like purely a visual experience. It's like there's these kind of like subtle vibrations that start in the controller. There's a crescendo of sound. Like there's this, I think it was the big creature right before the final Renoir fight that did this like burst of energy. And I got to the point where like on my third or fourth attempt that I was closing my eyes for that part because I couldn't really figure out the visuals, but I was hearing the sound cues like perfectly. It felt like a rhythm game. It was like zzz, pew, zzz, pew, like that kind of thing. And it's just this, the way it like crescendo and rises up to that climax of sound. It's like you sort of feel it coming. And I really felt like it was at least 3 different senses were involved with making these dodges and parries. It was like your sight, your sound, and your feel, your touch. And that just felt so cool. It ultimately felt as if you were feeling your way through some of these encounters more so than just using your eyes. And I really appreciated that. That I think that with the music is part of what makes nailing a parry so satisfying. Like,
yeah, a lot of games of this type that kind of implement a parry system and a dodge system and stuff will give you like big visual indicators. It's like the screen goes red, or like their sword glows red. And a lot of the parrying and dodging in this game is not like that. Like,
right.
There is no big flashy thing. It's just you kind of watch the sword swing and like hear the sound and just kind of, you, like you said, you feel it. Like, that's a silly way to put it, but it really does feel that way. It's like you just kind of get into a rhythm and you feel the dodge. And you're like, okay, this is when I have to do it. And it does make for just a really satisfying experience.
It's all so good, man. And I feel like at this point, like, we should probably move into more of the story beats because we've covered a lot else, but I'm sure other things will sneak into the conversation. But the highlights being the art and I want to call them the highlights, but it's like this game has 6 highlights.
I would say like everything is a highlight. There's really like it's so crazy. You know the meme with like the horse where it's like one part of the horse is like drawn really ugly and the other parts are like the fire horse. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I've seen so many for this game that's like story, music, combat, and it's just the fire horse like all the way down.
It's all drawn.
There's just no down part of this game.
Yeah, like even my critiques are like aspects of various things. They're not those things as a whole. I mean, there's really like everything in a total package is just so well done. I mean, truly everything.
And really, like, I was thinking of, because Andor is on right now. We're watching Star Wars Andor as we're playing through this game, and I was really thinking about it kind of similarly to how Andor's acts work, where it's like build, 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 and then the end of an act comes, and it just hits you with some of the like coolest plot reveals and craziest stuff, and you're just like the most awesome boss fight, and like here's some sick music, and here's like a great story reveal and some of the best performances in the game. You're just like, oh man, like at the end of every act just feels so good. Which like, right, we should probably kind of talk about, kind of go through those. We already talked about the end of Act 1 being the death of Gustav and the introduction of Verso.
Yeah, and that's a great scene because it's like, I think SKA has just learned how to swim, which is like an overworld travel thing for you. And the way this cutscene is playing out is you've beaten some boss, and SKA gets in the water, and he's like, okay, everyone jump on, and Seal and Lune go first, and then Mael and Gustav are about to jump on. And it's worth, like, I don't think we mentioned this earlier, Mael is only like 16. Her whole reason for leaving Lumiere, she's basically like tired of sitting around and waiting to die. So she wants to go on this expedition and, like, you know, rather than wait 16 more years to die is basically how she feels, right?
Right.
Or it wouldn't be 16, but
it would be 9. It would be 9.
Yeah.
But because Gustav, even in the beginning, like before you go out, you can fight her as like a kind of a just like a warm up prep fight. And at the end of that fight, Gustav's like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, you still have 9 good years. Like, we all have a year left, but like you have 9 good years. And she's like, she basically says, like, I've never felt like I belong here quite right. Like, I belong out there. I need to go and do this. Like, I need to be part of this. I need to help fight this thing that's happening.
Yeah. And so Gustav and Mael have very much a, like, big brother, little sister kind of relationship. Like, she thinks the world of him, especially because she does not have parents. So he has kind of functioned as, like, a father figure for her. So basically they're about to jump on SKA here, and suddenly Mael finds herself, like, trapped in this energy bubble, and then you just see this, like, bolt of light shoot through Gustav like a bullet.
Yeah, just wrecks him.
Yeah. And then you get to do one of these Gustav versus Renoir fights that's like a Cloud versus Sephiroth thing where you can't win.
Yeah.
It just destroys you.
It's very much like oh god, am I going to die here? Like, I feel like I'm going to die here.
And then so Mael basically has to watch him kill Gustav. And then it looks like he's about to strike her, like Renoir is about to strike her. But then Verso appears out of nowhere, and he parries it. And you know, then this huge dramatic conversation follows that at the time does not mean much to you, because, like, Verso and Renoir are referencing all these things that you find out later.
Yeah, it makes, like, no sense. But it's like, okay, cool. I'm sure I'll figure that out later.
and it's just intriguing enough to where I remember, like, in our Discord chat, we're asking all kinds of these questions. Like, oh my God, what does this mean? Like, what is the end of Act 1?
Right.
So it's, like, interesting mystery. And at that point, so Gustav dies and Act 2 starts, and Verso is kind of I'd say, like, the main character. Not really just, like, the main character from the player's point of view. With all the conversations and stuff, right?
This is genuinely a really good, like, ensemble cast.
Yeah.
And you can swap out, like, as you're exploring the world and stuff, you can swap out to have any one of them, like, lead the party. Like, Lune will even, like, kind of float above the ground because of her magic, which is really cool. Yeah.
And also, you don't have to hear the sound of footsteps. So if you just, like, really want to hear just the music, you can switch to her and kind of hover around the world instead of walking, so you can hear just the sounds of the game. I thought that was really cool.
This game has a thing for feet, because Lune is always, like, walking around with bare feet, because it doesn't matter, because she can't touch the ground, so she doesn't have to worry about her, or she can, I guess, but she chooses not to. She floats above the ground most of the time, so like, her feet aren't touching the ground, so she's bare feet. And then, like, Monako will, like, take the feet of fallen Nevrons to learn their skills. He's like a blue mage. So, like, this game's got to think about feet. But it's okay. It's not in a weird way. It's fine.
Yeah, it's really not what you're thinking when
it really is not. But it's just kind of funny that, like, feet come up more in this game than most games, and it's still not weird, which is, like, impressive, honestly.
Yeah, so, you know, Act 1 ends with this huge emotional climax and Gustav's death. And a lot of Act 2 is Mael trying to figure out how to come to terms with his death. And, you know, there's obviously a lot of themes of, like, grief in this game.
There's a really touching scene where you bury Gustav in like a forest. You come to a tree. Verso's like, I know a spot that you bury his like robot arm. You don't actually bury him, but it's just this like really sweet scene where there's a bunch of other graves around, and you can kind of tell that like Verso's buried a bunch of former expeditioners here that he's traveled with, and like it's just like all of the party members are like talking about their experiences with Gustav and like sharing their final thoughts with his, ghost essentially. Really, really sweet scene that I really liked, and another great example of like the writing and performances in this game.
Yeah, there's these great interactions because like Mayel, being a kid, she's like super emotional about the whole thing. And the way Lune is reacting is basically like, yeah, we all miss Gustav, but like, for those that came before, like we continue,
for those that come after, right? Yes, tomorrow comes.
Mayel loses her mind. It's like, did you even care about him? And CL is such an interesting character because I swear she's like a 900-year-old woman in like a 30-year-old's body. She is so wise, and she basically just like is able to take Mayel aside and be like, listen, like we all grieve differently, and like we understand you're in pain, and like we miss him too. Like we promise we do. Like some of us knew him longer than you did, but like he understood what this was about, and if he was in your position, he would also understand like we have to go on, and like we're going to honor him. And Verso says, hey, I actually know a place where we can bury him, and so it's really cool seeing like three adults sort of trying to help a child deal with grief. Or a teenager, right?
I think you bring up a really good point in the way that like this game, we've obviously talked about, it's very much a game about grief and like moving on from death in a lot of ways that we'll kind of get to in a minute. But the adults of this game are all in the very unique situation of like they're all on a clock anyway. Like Mael has 9 years left, and so like death to her doesn't feel as like real and as close. But for all the adults in this game, minus Verso, I guess, but him in a different way. But like Lune and Ciel, whether they die on the expedition or not, like they still only have, a few more months to live anyway. So it's like for them, death is a thing that they've been thinking about for the last probably 2 or 3 years. They've kind of been coming to terms with and coping and getting ready for. So for them, Gustav's death probably hits a lot differently than for Mael. So it's just kind of another reflection of that, and kind of this world that they're living in it's a really depressing one. I mean, right? It's one where everybody is on a clock and they know when that clock is going to come up on the dot every year, Yeah,
there's this great part where when you learn a little more about Ciel's backstory and you find out that her husband died in like a farming accident. And she says, it's one thing when someone dies to the Gomage because we're prepared for it. We understand it. We know it's coming. She's like, it's a whole different deal when they die early from something else because she says something like, I didn't even consider it as a possibility. I was just always focused on like, because I think he was a couple years older than her. Like they weren't the same age. So she was always like, he's going to go before me at some point, and that's what she's preparing for. But it wasn't like this, And then, of course, you find out even later that she was pregnant and didn't realize it. And she tries to kill herself by drowning herself after he dies. And she ends up losing the baby. And then she has this whole other thing where she's like, I felt so guilty about that. And I can't, if I were ever to somehow talk to him again, I don't even know how I would bring it up. Like, it's so tragic. And yet she, obviously we know she had a very dark moment. But her character is presented as someone who's able to just like overcome this through, not easily, but through just understanding it and continuing forward.
Right, like she's one of the like most lighthearted and like strongest of the characters, but hiding this like really tragic, painful past, and it's just really because she's not shown to be like comic relief or anything, but like she is probably one of the more lighthearted, like uplifting the spirits of everybody, and like always kind of trying to be the voice of reason and the voice of hope and positivity, even after such tragedy that she's, befallen. And it's all these characters are so well done. I do not know if we can emphasize that enough throughout this.
Yeah, and they're just, oh man, it's like I don't even know what to say about some of these characters because they're just all so good. And if anyone's listening to this, like they either already know what I'm talking about or they need to stop listening to it and go find out what I'm talking about.
Yeah, like if you're hearing all this and you haven't played the game, like stop, please go play the game.
It's only $50 too.
Yeah. If you don't have,
and it's on Game Pass.
It's free if you have Game Pass. So, but as we're kind of going through Act 2 and coping with Gustav's loss, right? We end up going to the original Lumiere. It's called Old Lumiere. It's where Lumiere kind of started in the main continent, right? Lumiere has now been split off as like an island, but there was an original city kind of in the center where we meet Renoir again.
Is this the shattering is what caused this? Is that what they call it?
The fracture.
The fracture, okay.
Yes, the fracture, which is kind of like a thing that happened 100 years ago that we don't really understand. It's like, it's just a thing that happened. I guess not 100 years ago. It happened 67 years ago. But
everyone knows that like the city split apart and then there was a number 100 on a giant monolith and people started dying and everyone understands this, but no one really knows like why at all.
Right. And when we get into Old Lumiere and we fight Renoir again, we find out kind of a big one of the big twists in Act 2. We find out that Verso is actually Renoir's son.
Yeah, and this is immediately a moment of like betrayal to Lune, who's confronting him. Was like, how could you not tell us that? And he's basically like, I don't like to talk about it.
Right.
We don't associate anymore. Like we're not. I haven't talked to him in forever. Like we're not close. It didn't seem relevant. But Lune's very like suspicious of this. And she finds out from an expedition journal, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
And as that act moves through and you fight Renoir once in this act, right? And you find out after that I can't remember the order of events, so maybe you can explain this better, but I know the big things you find out are that Maëlle is actually Renoir's daughter named Alicia, and you see like a girl that looks kind of like Maëlle a few times, and she has this half mask on because her face is all burned, and you kind of learn about like Verso's sister died in this tragic fire and this tragic backstory and everything, but it's slowly pieced together that like this is Maëlle, and after you beat the Paintress, I think in Act 2 you get that back in time thing. That was so cool. So you fight the Paintress as like the final boss of Act 2. And it's a really hard fight because it takes place like right after a fight with Renoir as well. And I struggled hard on this thing. It took me like 12 tries.
Great fight though. Definitely
awesome
one
fight.
Definitely one of the strongest in the game as far as like overcoming it, feeling so good.
That was one where I was like, dude, I think I might need to quit this game. I literally don't think I'm ever going to beat this. But eventually you do, right?
Yeah,
to everyone who hasn't played this game yet, eventually you will overcome.
Yeah, like we continue. Like every time you beat a fight, actually, when you click A to like go on, it says "We continue" at the bottom, which I thought was a really nice touch because it's one of the rallying cries of the expedition. Like when one falls, we continue. So like every time you beat a fight, it's like "We continue." I thought that was a really nice touch.
And every time I had to restart a fight, I was like, "For my past selves that came before."
For those that came before.
and so you go back in time, or it's like a flashback sequence, kind of. Almost like a parallel sequence, sort of hard. But basically what happens is you're playing as Alicia, but it's just Maëlle with a burned face. And that's when you kind of put together they're the same person. And you're in the manor that you've visited this manor a couple times throughout the game. There's like little portal doors in various levels that lead you back there. And there's like a couple puzzles you can do for soundtrack bonuses or like tracks that you can play in camp on the little record player, right? But you start to realize like, okay, this is like is the Desandra family? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, the Desandra, something like that.
Yeah, so this is like Renoir's family, and this is their house. And you end up going in there and you realize that like her parents are these things called painters, and they have some sort of power where they can like paint a portrait or a mural and it becomes like a world and that you can enter it, right?
And they're essentially kind of, it feels like they're treated as gods almost. Like they can create worlds and then they're like the god of the world.
And so Maëlle, in this house fire, the real Verso basically sacrificed himself to save her. And because of this, their mother, Aline, painted a world where he still exists. And she has basically become addicted to this, right? She's like in it, and she can't get, and she could get out, but she doesn't want to, and it's like messing with her mental state in the real world. And this becomes a huge conflict between her and Renoir, who wants like this thing to end so he can get his family back. And it's these huge reveals through this flashback. And when she goes, her sister, male sister named Clea, right? Or Clea, and confusing it with Andor character Clea. But she basically reveals like some of this through a conversation with Mael. And when Mael tries to get back into the painting, Clea's like, watch out, like mother's gonna get you. And then that's exactly what happens. And Clea, it even just says something that's like, oh God, you've done it now. Well, maybe you'll be done with this by the time I get back. It almost sounds like she's going grocery shopping or something. And so this is when Mael then gets transported back into the painting universe, and she's Mael again, but now she has all of the memories of Alicia, and she understands like what all is going on. And you kind of explain that to the rest of the party, and you confront Verso because he knew about it. And it really suddenly puts like everything that you've been working toward in kind of a whole different context, because now the Paintress is sort of this tragic figure. And you find out that, you know, the Renoir you thought you knew is actually like the painted version of him. And so the real one has entirely different motivations. There is no real Verso. There's only painted Verso. And it really, like I said, that conversation at the end of Act 1 suddenly makes more sense. It recontextualizes all these events and conversations you've had. And now what the party is going to do is, instead of us trying to stop the Paintress to prevent everyone from dying, which we've done, right? The Paintress is dead. The number disappears. That part's over. We now understand that Renoir, real Renoir, wants to get rid of the painting because he wants his daughter and his wife to come back out of the painting and live their lives, right? They're like trapped in it. They're addicted to it. But there's this whole philosophical thing of like, but like, Dad, this is my real family now. And don't these people count? And don't their lives count? Like, just because we made it up doesn't mean it's not real. And so your party now wants to like stop Renoir from erasing the painting. And that kind of becomes the new in-game goal of Act 3.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good summation. I think you got all the main points.
It gets complicated.
It does get a little blurry. I think you got all the main points. A couple little things that I would add. Verso, this canvas that you're in isn't like Aline's creation. It's technically
that's
Verso's.
Right, Verso.
Right,
and
Verso,
Aline doesn't want to get rid of it because it's like the last memory, the last vestige of Verso that exists in her life. Like,
right, exactly. This is the last like remnants of Verso that she has. She has just gone into it and painted a new Verso to be in it, and like also Renoir, and like she's painted her family into the painting. But technically it is Verso's painting, not hers. Yeah. And we learn here that like the fracture was caused by Aline and Renoir like fighting whenever they first enter the painting. That's what causes the fracture and kind of sets all this into motion. And we learn that Renoir, this is kind of in some post-game stuff, but like we learn that Renoir was trapped underneath the monolith, the real Renoir. He's also like the curator that you meet kind of early in the game. There's like the curator of the manor is supposed to also be like the real Renoir. He turns into,
but he looks like this crazy creature, so you can't tell that.
Right? Yeah, you have no idea. But it turns out that he's been the real Renoir this whole time. And now that you've defeated the painter, there's this moment where once you defeat the Paintress, everyone in the painting is gommaged. They're all wiped out. Like there's this great scene where everybody is like back in Lumiere and they're all having a big party and everybody's like cheering, and you see, you know, Gustave's sister, and it's just like this really happy moment of like, we did it, we defeated the Paintress, and you can just feel something isn't quite right. Like Verso doesn't look as happy as maybe he should, and you know, Monoko seems to be a little distant, and it's like, what is wrong? And then immediately after that, you see everybody gommage, and that's when kind of all the pieces start to click, and you realize that Renoir is, like you said, trying to wipe out this canvas from existing and have Alicia and Aline kind of come back into the reality, right? At least, right, what their reality is. But for Lune and Ciel and Gustav's sister and all these other people, like this is reality. So that's kind of where this weird philosophical thing starts to come in. And it leads to what I think is a pretty satisfying ending, but I know there's some weirdness with Act 3 that we probably want to talk about.
Yeah, and maybe a couple other things I just thought about. I don't know if you just mentioned this, maybe I zoned out, but the part where the whole Gommage thing is because Aline knows that she's eventually going to lose control to Renoir, and this is her way of like warning. It's not even really warning the people, but it's basically like forcing everyone to really consider the last years of their life as special and worth living to the fullest, because they're eventually all going to die, and she knows that, and she can't do anything about it.
Right.
So the countdown is really her way of delaying Renoir.
Right, and I think there's something you can kind of read into there of like Verso didn't get that because he died suddenly. So it's like her letting these people, Verso's creations, kind of have the last year of their life and like kind of live it to the fullest, because Verso didn't get to do that because he died suddenly. So yeah. There's this kind of that was a really kind of cool twist on the Paintress, because it turns out that she's not actually the bad guy that you're trying to fight, but it's done in a way that doesn't feel like a rug pull or anything. It doesn't feel like, aha, there was a real bad guy the whole time. It's like, no, it feels like it makes sense and is authentic and just kind of recontextualizes the world and isn't like some weird ass pull, right?
Yeah, and so after everyone gets like Gommage there at the end, Maëlle kind of, or the end of Act 2, right? Maëlle sort of understands that she is now, that she's a paintress and that she has some of these powers, which unlocks 3 sick-ass skills for you in game.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
And then also allows her to basically bring Lune and CL back. And there's sort of a reason where like you have to use chroma, and their chroma hadn't faded yet, so I can't just bring back like anyone right now. But right. We can restore the main party for the purposes of the game.
Yeah.
And from here you get in Act 3, which you were kind of alluding to us kind of talking about. It's a little strange because the game, so when Act 3 starts, SK gets his flying rock back, so now he's an airship. And you kind of get that traditional Act 3 JRPG where you can fly all around. But I feel like the game is sort of, it's like encouraging you to get stronger through various lines of dialogue, through all this new content, through the companion quest. But I swear to God, the last boss is tuned for you to go to it immediately after Act 2. And I thought this was kind of strange and disappointing. The last boss to me, the storyline boss to be clear.
Yes.
Super easy in my opinion. But the way this game I think is kind of intending you to play it is, and I wish this was more clear, is like really what you should do is you should go beat the boss in Act 2 pretty much right after you've done the companion quest, or Act 3. You do your companion quest, then go fight the boss, then come back and do all this extra stuff, right? Because you can get, if you're level 55, you're probably too high for the final boss. And you can get to like 80, 90 easily doing all of this Act 3 side stuff.
Oh yeah, like I'm not even clear with most of the Act 3 side stuff, and I'm already like hovering around 75 to 78. Yeah. So like you can get very high, and then it makes the final boss like very easy. I did some polls and stuff on some gaming groups I'm in, and pretty much everybody's like, yeah, it's pretty easy. Like it's a pretty easy fight. I think most people agree. It is a little bit weird. I thought when I went into it, maybe I was just over leveled because I did do a lot of the side stuff, and then I went in to fight it around like 60, like early 60s, and I was like, God, this is a cakewalk. Like in particular, you can actually get the Gommage gradient attack for Maëlle, and you can actually do the gommaging instead of being the gommaged. And this attack is just completely and utterly broken. I think I had the final boss at like 3/4 of his health. He still had, and I gommaged him and brought him down to like maybe 2 more hits. Like I mean, just completely and utterly shattered him.
Just like was on fire for 4 turns for me, and he died, and that's
it. It is a weird like paced thing with there is so much really great side content, and a lot of it is really hard. But it is like, don't do it until after you beat the final boss. But the game doesn't really tell you that.
And like, yeah, so it was a little disappointing, the final boss. But having said that, I still think the ending and everything that happens narratively with it is great. You basically get 2 choices at the end, because what it comes down to is Verso and Maëlle are going to fight. because Verso is like,
Yes.
I'm tired of living this life, and like we are basically lying to everyone in this world. And it's causing real pain in the real world. We need to end this. And Mael's just kind of like, no, this is my family now. Like, who are you to say that this isn't real, yada, yada. And you actually get to choose who you control, and you duel the other one and beat them. And the ending is different depending on who you picked. I picked Verso's ending first. I think you picked Mael's, right?
I did, yes. So we actually both picked different endings to start, which is cool for the purposes of this podcast.
So it's definitely not any Life is Strange fans out there. It's not quite a Bay and Bay situation, in that one of them was like obviously the fucking wrong choice. These are both pretty well done. If you pick Verso to win, then Mael is kind of like dying in his arms in the canvas, and he's explaining to her like, it's gonna be okay. Like, this is for the best. Like now you can go on and like live your life and whatnot. And she kind of disappears, and it flashes to a funeral where they're basically all like reburying Verso. It's like a new memorial for him, because now he's truly dead in all of their minds. And the whole family is like moved on from the canvas, and there's this really sad funeral scene. And Mael scenes like images of everyone throughout the game that slowly like fades away into the darkness. And it's just like a really touching scene that really symbolizes like, we're moving on now.
Right.
It's heartbreaking, but the whole theme has been grief, and like we are finally addressing our grief instead of running away from it.
Right. But it also has that kind of like bitterness of like all the people that there's a really great part of that scene that you didn't mention that I really like. Whenever you do this, Verso, like Mael kind of disappears and the world starts to fall apart, and Verso is standing there, and like Monaco and Esquier like come up and give him a hug, because like,
oh yeah,
they've known this is going to happen. Like they kind of knew this was always the end game. They knew they weren't real. Like those two characters in particular have kind of had a bigger view of this whole thing for a long time, and they kind of understand what's going on. So they've accepted it, and they kind of give Verso like a goodbye hug. CL shows up and is like kind of understanding, gives them a hug, and is like, she kind of gets it. But Lune, she just kind of sits there in between the two worlds. Like, because Verso's kind of in this, like, outside of the canvas in this, like, weird cross-dimension thing. And Lune just kind of sits in between the two worlds. Like, she's like, I refuse to acknowledge, like, I refuse to accept that you're just erasing us like this. Like,
yeah,
all
she's
of
not
this,
a fan of this decision.
No. And I thought that was really, really in line with Lune's character, who's been very like about the mission, like, she trusted, she always was skeptical of Verso and his goals. And at the end, they form this bond, and you kind of have these two characters form this relationship, and then Verso in her mind still betrays her, right? Erases her and goes against everything that they've been fighting for, and she kind of refuses to accept this. And I thought that was a really, really cool scene from your character's point of views that you've kind of been following, and the characters of this world. That's like, we've been fighting for years to save our lives, and you just erased it all. And like, that's a really bitter pill to swallow, I think, which is why I picked Mael.
Yeah. And then the Mael ending, oh man. So, it flip-flops. Like, Verso is dying in her arms, and he is just like, he's talking about how he's like, I've lived 100 years. I'm so tired of all of this. I know I'm just the creation of like a real version of me. I just want it to be over. Like, please don't bring me back. Please, like, get rid of all this.
He's literally like, he's bawling, saying like, I don't want this life. I don't want this life.
Yeah.
And just like a absolutely heart-wrenching performance from Ben Starr, where you're just amazing. Feeling so bad. You're like, oh my God, I'm sorry.
And Mael seems like she's sympathetic toward the situation. It's not going to change her mind, but she's being like, I think is like, comforting about it as she can. But then we get a little bit of a flash away sequence, and they're all at this concert hall, right? So it's all the characters you've seen throughout the game, including like Gustav and Sophie are back. The implication is Mael has painted them all back, right? So like now she can live.
She's brought everyone back.
Yeah, and this world is exactly the way she wants it. And then someone starts to get up on stage to play the piano, and you see that it's Verso. He doesn't exactly have a smile on his face. And then it kind of like pans back and forth between the crowd and him a couple times as he sits down to play it. And then right as he starts to play it, it goes over to Mayel. And she has a look on her face that's a little sinister. And, earlier in the game when you do the flashback, you see Aline and Renoir in real life have these weird, splotchy paint things around their face when they're being, corrupted by the painting, by the canvas.
Yeah,
and you've never seen
that
that
for too long.
Yeah, and you've never seen that on Mayel before until this very end, where it pans across her face and that flashes over her weird, sinister smile. And then it goes to Gustav, who looks defeated and just starts to play the piano. And it's in that moment that you realize, Verso, sorry, yeah. And it's in that moment that you realize, oh my God, it isn't just that he doesn't want to be here. It's that he's trapped. He is Mayel's prisoner. And she has sort of lost it to the point where she does not care. All that matters to her is she gets the world that she wants. And it just puts and it's just it goes from this real end of Star Wars original trilogy, everyone's celebrating, everyone's happy thing, to just you slowly start to realize it's actually more of a horror movie ending. And it's I thought that was so cool.
There was this moment, there's this moment where like how you said, it starts off really celebratory and it feels like it should be triumphant. And as soon as I saw Gustav back, I was like, yeah, but very quickly it just starts to feel
it feels wrong. Yeah,
it just feels wrong. And I wanted to keep that triumphant feeling and be excited, but very quickly you just realize this isn't right. This is wrong. And yeah, it's a real horror movie, depressing ass ending if you pick Mayel. And we both did the Mayel companion quest, right, where you kind of free Alicia. Yeah. And the painted version of Alicia that Aline paints to kind of keep her family together, right? And I had read some things about people, and I even felt this way initially. It was it feels inconsistent with Mayel, who was so willing to let go of Alicia and respect her wishes to leave the painting, but wasn't willing to respect Verso's. And I think it really shows that Mayel is a teenager. Alicia is a teenager at heart, and she's selfish, and she wants her brother there. So she paints her brother back. She's willing to let Alicia leave because she doesn't need Alicia. She is Alicia. She doesn't need the painted version of her. She does need the painted version of Verso. She needs that to feel whole and to feel like she's living the life she wants. So since she can, she just paints him back, whether he wants to be there or not. And it's when you think about it that way, it's damn, that is haunting. And I saw some people complaining well, it doesn't really paint Mayel in the best light. And it's yeah, it's not supposed to.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's not supposed to paint her in the best light.
And it's such an effective ending. I really didn't see it coming. I really thought right until Verso walks out at the piano, I was oh, this is just going to be the happy-go-lucky ending. That's fine. Glad I picked the other one. And then it just takes this awesome turn. And I think it's so great too, because this game's themes are always about how there is some level of sacrifice that has to be made for good things to happen, and that's part of where the grief comes from, right? People are grieving people that have been lost, but these people are usually lost because they've been dedicating their lives to stopping this expedition, right? Or in the case of the real life family, it was a tragic accident that, it might be related to the writers or whatever, but a tragic event that they couldn't stop from happening. But none of that really matters at the end of the day if these people can't move on from it. And that's what Mayel embodies, is it isn't just that she's been grieving, it's that she has never even taken the first step to getting over that grief. And that is causing her to basically become the next paintress, become her mother. She's addicted to this world because she can't get over not having her brother. And she feels it's her fault that he's dead because he saved her from the fire. And there's that guilt along with that grief. And it's just, what a great set of characters. And all of their motivations tie into the themes and the events of the game. It all comes together just so well in the end. Even if it's a little confusing at times, I think ultimately it's a very satisfying way that the story ends.
I'll be very interested to see how this is translated into film in the movie version of it. It'll be interesting to see if some of those same reveals and twists maintain their intensity and the sense of like everything clicking together, you know? Like, will it be, because I definitely felt like at the end of Act 2, I literally I was like staring at the screen going like, what the fuck just happened? Like, I have no clue what is going on. I actually like put the game down for the night. I went go take a shower, and I just like went through all the thoughts in my head. I just went through all the threads, and then got out the shower and just like wrote it all down real quick. And I was like, okay, I think this is what happens. Like, to just like try and piece it all together. And like, once you think about it, it really does work. And it is such an interesting like twist and revelations, and like the way everything comes together is really cool. You just have to like put some real thought into it, which is honestly like, it's refreshing in a lot of ways, because a lot of games will just spell it out for you, or, you know, kind of whatever. This one, you really have to sit there and you have to think it through and like piece all the pieces together, but it does make sense. And there's a lot of like foreshadowing and a lot of setup and a lot of build up throughout the game. And then when it all comes together and it all clicks, you're like, everything makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. And in both endings, despite being very different, both feel very complete and very satisfying.
Yep.
They don't really feel like, I mean, you can call it a little bit of a cliffhanger in that we don't really know what this new version of Mael is going to look like in her like her dominion now, but it leaves it open just enough for like some type of DLC or sequel, but it still is a totally complete story if we never get that. And I think that's, you know, such a great way to end a game if you can manage it. I'm trying to think of anything else regarding like the story that is so good in this that we've missed.
I just love that both endings, like neither ending feels like the good ending per se.
Right.
Like both endings, they're bittersweet at best, right? Like, but like both of them result in either Mael becoming like a corrupted potential new paintress, or all of the characters that you know and love and have followed being wiped out of existence because Mael could not get over her grief. And it's worth mentioning that the reason that Verso ends up feeling the way that he does in the final moments is that he understands that Mael is never going to leave. And like, he confronts her and basically says like, you lied to your father when you said you would leave the painting, that you would only stay for a little while and then you would get back out. Like, I know you, I can tell you're never going to leave here. You're going to do the same thing that your mother did. And I don't want to be trapped in that forever, and I don't want you to be trapped in that forever. So we have to end this. And it's really intense, because it is Verso then making the decision for all the other characters that we've been following this whole game, for Lune, for CL, for all the expeditions that have come before, right? For all those who come after, that you don't get to exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's just, neither choice is good, but it has to be made, right? Like, one of them has to happen. And I really like that. Like, there is no happy ending to this, but it feels fitting of this world and of the characters and of the way that everything is kind of played out so far.
Yeah, I never would have thought at the beginning of the game that I would be on like Team Renoir by the end of it. But there's a great scene, you know, before you fight him for the final time, where Mael and Renoir are arguing. And Renoir is basically just like, dude, I want my family back. Like, that's what this comes down to. This is like a bad drug that you guys can't drop. And none of it's real. But of course, like, it's not real to him, but it's very real to Mael at this point. It's very real to the creations in the painting. And yeah, it's like you're saying, it comes down to Verso feels like, as the creator, or as the sort of painted version of the creator, he has the right to do this, particularly because he is suffering for it more than anyone else really is.
Right.
But then Mael's kind of taking that opposite approach. It's like, but no, like these, I mean, at what point are these people not real? They've gone through their whole lives. They've had loss and happiness and grief and all of this like a real human does. Like, why doesn't this count? It counted enough for Mom to want to hang out with the fake family for years. So,
right.
You know, and yeah, the way those two things collide, I just think it's really cool. And it like you said, it makes both endings feel like not the good one necessarily, but not the bad one either. They're just, these are the two realities. These are the only two choices.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's like, one of these two has to happen, and neither one is perfect, but you have to pick one of them.
So I think that's about all the story we'll probably talk about. I think we got through most of it. Before we wrap up, there's a couple more gameplay things I want to talk about just because I think they're worth bringing up. And one of them for me was, in games like this, typically, who bothers with protect, shell, all that crap, right? all it does is make every fight you fight take longer. Because you're never doing enough damage to take up for the 2 turns it costs to like buff your party, right? What I loved about this game is that you have Verso has a thing that gives everyone powerful, makes him do more damage. It also gives him his perfection, which is the resource that you use to gain ranks and do more damage with him. Mael has something that gives everyone protect. You take less damage. It puts her in offensive stance. It was just like you could do these things that, CL has a rush thing that still gives her a sun mark or whatever, right? So it was like, it wasn't a waste of a turn. It was actually just allowing you to do something else as part of your opening combo. And I thought that was great. It's one of the few games I felt like where I was consistently buffing people at the start of combat and not feeling like it was a waste of time. And I loved that. I loved that so much.
What's also great about that is, again, with the way this game lets you build characters and the way it lets you create builds, like, you could also... I had my party buffed pretty regularly without ever using those buff skills.
Yeah, like through the Lumina stuff.
Right, like you can set up Luminas that will start you with those buffs, or if you drop to a certain amount of health, it will give you that buff. Or what I like to do is, like, if you heal, you can apply those buffs. So I would have Lune with all of those, like, healing shell and healing powerful and healing rush, and then revitalize the whole party, and then everybody's buffed. And it's like, okay, let's go. And so it's like there's so many different ways to apply those buffs, and they always felt useful.
I was doing something similar where, so there's those auto shell pick Lumina and auto whatever, right? So your character starts with those buffs for the first 3 turns. And then CL has something called like Dark Transfusion or something where it costs 0 action points and it heals any bad status effects and then duplicates any good ones onto the rest of your party. So I was like, oh snap. So I just put all the auto stuff in her, and her first turn was a 0 AP move that gave everyone those buffs. And I just thought that was like an awesome opener. The only problem was... I don't know. I probably just missed it. Is there no SOS powerful or auto powerful?
I think there is.
I must have just missed it.
Maybe not an auto powerful. I know there's an SOS powerful. I'm not sure.
Oh, you know what it
there's
is?
An auto.
There's a anytime you apply shell, you apply powerful. I think that's what I ended up doing.
Okay, yeah.
So you can get it to where basically one person will just start off the fight with all these, and then you can just duplicate them through like what you were doing, what I was doing, or you can cast them, or you can just put them individually on people. It's truly... your imagination is the limit on how you want to make your characters powerful. And I just thought the whole buff system and debuffs fed really well into those game systems.
I do wish there was slightly more ways to debuff your enemies. Yeah. I feel like there's not quite enough of those.
And then there's no status effects for like the other elements. Like you have burn, but then like for the most part, I think Ice Lance slows, but that's like the only ice spell that slows. And the electric, there's no like paralysis from electric or anything. So I thought the elements were a little weird and that they didn't do much other than the burn. But it really doesn't matter, I would say. You still have like so many options.
Right. I was about to say, there is something to be said for maybe not giving too many options. Mm-hmm. Like you maybe don't want to overwhelm people with too many options. And this game does have a lot of variety. But it did feel a little weird that like there wasn't more ways to debuff your enemies or like cancel out their buffs. Because like there's some of the endless tower fights where like those troubadours that can like blow the trumpets and buff their entire like squad. Mm-hmm. Those guys will like apply shell, and all the enemies have like powerful on shell and rush on shell. So it's like it'll do one buff and the whole thing is like buffed with every buff, and there's like no way to get rid of it. And it's like, oh my god, I'm so screwed.
There's only a couple skills in the whole game that get rid of enemy buffs, and I think they might even be like Monaco skills.
Yeah, which is that's a little frustrating for sure.
Yeah, but it really seems like though, I guess there's a difference between the buffs and the status effects. The status effects were like could only apply to you except for burn, which could apply to both, I think. But there was like decay or whatever it was, right?
Blight. There was
the thing that like took down your max health.
Yeah, like cut it in half or whatever.
Then there's the other one that's just like after a certain number of turns you die. So there's a few that only apply to you, and that was kind of fine with me because I thought it was like interesting things you had to deal with, because every time you think you're safe in this game, every time you're like, oh yeah, my characters are super strong and I can dodge anything. Well, here's some new shit you have to deal with, right?
Right. Here's the thing you can't dodge, or good luck dodging because this pattern is stupid, or
There's also
blight you.
there's no turn counters on the buffs and debuffs. There are on the status effects, like you usually have a number associated with it. But the other ones, they all last for 3 turns unless you have like the extended shell Lumina. But it doesn't ever count down or anything, so you just have to kind of keep track of like how long have they had it, which is not at all a problem when you're doing the auto stuff like you were saying. But when I was trying to routinely reapply them with CL, I was like, oh god, can I afford to waste another turn, or do I need to do it now?
Right. Yeah, that is a little weird and feels just like a weird little like UI oversight.
Yeah, it seems like something that's almost just like, oh my god, we forgot kind of thing.
Right. Like this just never came up in playtesting, which is weird that happened, but I guess we just missed it, you know?
Last couple nitpicks for me. The overworld attack thing. It's like fine, but all it does is give you like a couple extra attacks at the start. It's like everyone gets 1 attack before the real initiative round starts, I guess, is how it works. Except on various enemies where they decide they just get to go first anyway. It's fine. I thought like it made me kind of miss Metaphor, because that overworld thing I thought was a little more purposeful, particularly with the way that you get so much extra stuff in both of these games if you don't take damage. But that seemed more important in Metaphor, because I think it was much bigger than 20% in Metaphor, right?
It felt bigger if it wasn't. It felt bigger.
and you had different kinds of overworld attacks based on your class. And the whole team went at once, so it was like a whole bonus turn. I thought that worked a little better. In this, I just really felt like all the speed system did was annoy the shit out of me, and having to actually care about people's speed to pull off combos, because it was like, I really want CL to go first with her double damage thing, but Lune has more speed, and also like the break system on enemies, which I didn't even mention because I think it might be one of the most ignorable things in this entire game. It's kind of like the in like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and stuff, where the stagger system, right?
Yeah,
you do enough
very similar
things
to stagger
to this meter, and then you like stagger them, and they're stunned for 1 turn, but that's one of their turns, and based on the speed, sometimes that can mean basically nothing. That basically meant no one got an extra turn. And there's all these attacks that are like, does more damage on stun. Oh, brother, I don't think I ever lined it up to where I could pull one of those off.
I had lined it up once or twice. There is a skill that you get later in the game. I think it might be in post-game stuff called Sniper. I don't know if you got that, Picto.
Oh, but remind me what it is again?
It lets you break on free aim shots.
Yes, I did.
That's another mechanic we didn't really even mention. Like you you have like, everybody has like a gun or like a spell.
A ranged weapon, essentially.
Yeah, that they can use to shoot. Kind of like in Metaphor, right? Metaphor had a similar thing. Or is it Persona 5? Whatever.
I think Persona.
Most of these games have some alternate fire thing lately, and this one does too. And that could also be, you could build around that. There are certain enemies that like they fly, and the only thing that'll really do damage to them is that free aim system. So like Sniper will let you break on free aim, and I ended up having that on a lot of characters because it doesn't make you like waste a skill slot for a break attack, and you could just break with free aim.
Dude, why did every skill that breaks sucked? Like I never wanted to carry any of them.
They are pretty bad. I don't have a lot of them, so anytime I need to break an enemy, I'm like, well, I hope you have Sniper on so that I can break you with a free aim shot, because I don't want to carry the break skills typically.
Yeah, and there's another Lumina, I think that's like your regular attack will also break, so you can do it different ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to clarify, the way these power shots work, they cost 1 AP a piece, and they do a little bit of damage, and sometimes like it makes more sense to just do that to finish off an enemy, or like you said, you can power it up and stuff. So it's just another layer on the combat that's really cool. And another thing I want to talk about is this game does something really interesting with the damage limit. So, there's the classic RPG 9,999 damage. That's like the most you can do in a single attack, right? And you end up hitting this kind of like midway through Act 2. I mean, depending on how well you built your characters and your level and everything, of course. And that was a little weird at first, because what it really felt like is when I'm going to fight the Paintress at the end of Act 2, I've taken every single skill that hits once off my action point, right? I only want multi-hit skills because it's just limiting my damage. But then when you beat the Paintress, you get a Picto that just lets you ignore the damage limit. So now there is no top end damage. And it turns out some of your characters have been doing like 400,000 damage this whole time.
Just absolutely devastating damage.
But you had no idea. And I almost wonder if they should have waited to do that after Act 3, just because I think that's part of what trivializes the final boss. But it is absolutely necessary for all the optional Act 3 content.
Oh my God.
Because some of these guys have tens of millions of HP, right? And,
Brutal.
But it's a really, I thought it was a really interesting system because it's both really cool from a game design standpoint, like balance, like keeping the combat balanced by giving you a damage cap, but then also just giving you this moment of like going Super Saiyan where you feel like you've gotten so powerful and it's so satisfying when suddenly you're hitting things for, especially the burns, dude. I was like, oh, burning everyone for 9,000 every turn is awesome. Oh, dude, burning them for 60,000 every turn is even cooler.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
There's some counters, like in late game, I'm having my L do counter damage for like 400,000 counter damage. And I'm like, let's go, dude. Like, there's just this moment of like pure elation whenever you see these like, 1.8 million damage. I was throwing in the Discord chat, like every time I broke a new damage barrier, I was like, just cross 1 million, let's go. Oh, just hit for 2.5, just hit for 4 million, like, let's go.
And it's funny, right? They released a patch for the game pretty quickly because there was this particular skill in the game that was like really overtuned. And not only that, but there was a bug with one of Mayel's weapons where we're supposed to double all burn damage in one of her stances, but instead it doubled all damage. So people were literally doing 1 billion damage with this skill. I'm pretty sure that would one shot even the hardest like optional boss in the game, right? Like that's an absurd number.
Yes, there was a lot of like there's a lot of talk about like one shot builds that were coming out of like this will kill every single enemy in the game in one shot. Just do XYZ. And it was hilarious, honestly. And it's so funny because their patch notes, like whenever they put out this thing, they're like, we still want you to be able to break the game. Yeah. Like this is intended. And I thought that was so refreshing. They were like, we want you to be able to figure out these crazy like one-shot builds and everything. It's just this is too easy to do that.
Yeah, we want you to break our game, but maybe not gommage our game. Just
right, exactly. We're not erasing final bosses. Like I will never beat Simon now, though. Now that there is no.
Hey man, I've heard that from you before. You must continue on.
I don't know, man. I know we continue it all, but I do wish.
Unfortunately, with my wedding coming up and everything, I have a lot going on right now, and I kind of wish I'd been able to give this game my the rebirth treatment, where I put 135 hours in. Not in the cards right now, unfortunately, but there is.
Always come back.
I can't always come back. I had about 45 hours of playtime, and I could easily do another 15 or 20 with all the side content. And if you go through just the story, which really you can only go through just the story through the first 2 acts. Like you can get distracted by side areas, but there's not really side quests, right?
It's pretty limited what you could do. There's a little bit of like freedom to explore a couple areas and do a couple things, maybe like fight a couple harder bosses, but not like a ton of freedom in like side questing and exploration.
I saw people saying 30 hours. That seems a little quick to me, but maybe that's just because we were playing on expert and some of the bosses we had to fight a dozen times.
It's also true.
But I would think somewhere between 30 and 40 hours, you're going to finish the story. And it's totally worth it. Like I can't recommend this game enough. Even with some of my like complaints here and there, the overall experience was just so great. I had so much fun with this game. There wasn't a whole lot of moments I wasn't having fun with this game. It came out of nowhere for a lot of people. It overshadowed Oblivion. Like I know some people have a very like because I'm this way too, a bit of a contrarian bent, right? And you get very skeptical when everyone's praising something. This is well worth it. This is deserving of every second of praise that it's getting. The president of France fucking tweeted out, which made me really upset because I was like, one, the president of my country, no one would even want him to, and then if he did, no one would care, and he wouldn't to begin with. So I'm a little jealous. But yeah, this game is just fantastic, and it's truly one of the better RPGs I've ever played. Definitely the best game I've played so far this year, and that would be the case if this was from a game of like 30 lifelong industry veterans. Half these people, like, this is their first game job. And it's astonishing. It's incredible. Like, well done to Sandfall.
It truly is kind of a unicorn, I feel like, of the games industry right now. Like, it almost feels like it's creating a new form of development, right? Tiny team, have some outsourcing, like outsource some of the marketing and QA stuff, like, but your core team is small, keep the budget small, but do a lot with a little, and they just absolutely nail it. It's one of the best games I've played in years. This thing is definitely gonna land in my top 20, like of all time. Like I'm trying to figure out where to put it, and I keep looking at my list, and I'm like, is it that good? I'm like, well, maybe. So it's truly a special game for me. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, there are some little small quibbles, like I understand those, but the overarching experience, the way I felt playing through this game, the emotions I felt, the joy, the excitement, the sadness, like the way this game made me feel playing throughout it, I just, nothing but a 10 feels right for me. It's just, it was a one of a kind experience. I think I'll be thinking about this one for a while.
You know, I don't know if it's necessarily like a new form of development, because to me, this has sort of always been something like Obsidian's niche, right? But Obsidian titles tend to maybe have, like, they're a little less popular. And I think what people have sort of done is they look at Obsidian and being like, oh yeah, well, they do pretty well for a medium-sized studio. They do pretty well, like, for a small development team, right? For an AA game.
Yeah.
There was almost like a cap of 9999 for Obsidian, if you will. And I think Sandfall has sort of demonstrated to people, like, no, actually, this style of game can actually lead to, like, AAA levels of success and praise and critical acclaim. Not to say that Obsidian's doing anything wrong. I think their titles are just, like I said, a little more niche.
Yeah.
But, like, Sandfall has really proven that, like, yeah, we have the technology now. We have the ability to outsource. Like, you can make a stellar game with 30 people for $30 million if you are smart about how you're allocating those resources, right? And it can't be hiring 300 people who all live in San Francisco. That's just not sustainable anymore. That's how you get Spider-Man 2 costing $350 million. Right? And it doesn't have to be every single thing in this game is like, oh, look at the individual strands of Geralt's hair moving. Like, who cares? It's just not worth the development time and resources. And I think it's just, they've really demonstrated that, and I'm really happy. And I'm with you there, where I hope this sends a little bit of a message to the industry that's like, hey, this is a completely viable way of doing things. You just have to have the passion and the discipline to pull it off.
Yeah, I think there's a real message here of, like, some of these studios, some of these projects are getting bloated on budgets, on staff, on, all these things, and it's unsustainable. And if you scale down a little bit and, like you said, use the resources smarter, you can have a Naughty Dog tier, like, story, writing, performance with some of the best gameplay I've seen in ages, and marry all that together into a Game of the Year contender, like, massive AAA project for a budget that is not that. Like, this game makes a lot of other games I've played recently look bad in comparison, and it didn't cost nearly the same, like, production, the scale of all these other productions. So, yeah, again, can't say enough good things about Clair Obscur. I'm so impressed. I'm surprised. Like, I came into it thinking that it was going to be great and that I was excited to experience it and I was, going to enjoy it. And I was completely blown away.
Yeah, so my expectations weren't super high, but they were kind of high. But it didn't matter how high they were, because I think they would have been exceeded.
It's true.
Yeah, I was about to say final thoughts. I feel like I've already said everything I want to say 100 times. It's so good. Every part of it is so good. And if you were into, anything, if you're into building characters, if you're into, like, twitchy combat, if you're into turn-based combat, if you're into great narratives, if you're into great world building, it really has a little bit of everything in that regard. If you're a fan of RPGs in any capacity, I would say this game is for you.
There's even some platforming in this game. We didn't even talk about it, but there's even platforming in this game.
There's some little jumping puzzles that the first time I went to one, I was like, this is so dumb. I don't care what's on the other end. I'm not going to do this. And then later on in the game, I went back and I was, like, so determined to do all of them.
And then as soon as you finish them, you just get like a swimsuit for the character, which is hysterical.
God, you got like a weird banana hammock for Monaco. And I was like, did I really just do all this shit for that?
And it's like, yes, you did, and it's hilarious.
I wish there was a few more outfits for the characters, but for the most part, I really enjoyed the ones you unlock, and the hairstyles looked really cool. I loved switching the hairstyles all the time, and the outfits
Oh my God,
all the
yeah.
time.
I was always like by the end of the game as I was heading into the final fight because I had set I don't know if you did this, but there's an option in the settings to like set cutscenes to always use like the proper outfit, right? Like their canon outfit. So I set that pretty early on because I had like the baguette outfit on people, and then like half the time I was getting like really emotional scenes with like freaking baguette hats and like weird sunglasses, and I was like, yeah, this isn't.
Do those have like the baguettes like on their back like it's a sword or something?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
It's so silly.
I think I read in New Game Plus if you like save one of those tokens that you get at the beginning, you can actually unlock a like baguette sword.
Oh.
Yeah, I was reading something about that. I was like, you actually get a sword. You get a baguette that is a sword. But I set pretty early. I set the like canon costumes for cutscenes, but I was always swapping around costumes. Like even towards the end game, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make everybody match, and like they're not all gonna have the exact same outfit, but they're all gonna be in like the same kind of style. And like it was so fun to just play around with outfits and hairstyles, even though they did absolutely nothing. Like game wise, they were all really good designs.
See, I kept them on in cutscenes because I really liked a couple of them, and I didn't really use the swimsuits with the baguettes, but I really liked a couple of the braided hairstyles for the women like way more than their defaults, so I had those on a lot.
Yeah.
And then Mayel has a couple of cool outfits throughout the game. Her like obscure outfit and her
The obscure
pure
outfit is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I could talk about this game all day, so we have to end it at some point. But
Yes.
A++, highly recommended. It might have some flaws here or there, but you are just not going to consider them, outweighing the good things about this game, which are just found around every corner. And huge recommendation for me.
100%. Go buy it. Go play it. If you listen to all this and haven't played it, I'm disappointed. Don't spoil this whole game for yourself, please.
I'm not disappointed. I'm very appreciative of your listen, but I do feel bad for you because you have robbed yourself of an experience. Oh, I'll say that.
Yes, fine. That's what I mean. It really is just it's a one of a kind experience for me. I really loved it. Go play it.
Well, that about wraps up our discussion on Sandfall Interactive's instant classic, Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
You can find this episode, as well as all of our other episodes, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting platform. And you can follow us on YouTube and Blue Sky at the Games Gone By podcast.
Signing off for Games Gone By, I'm Adam.
I'm Austin.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.